The desert sun beat down on the execution ground as 15-year-old Mateo stood trembling, a pistol forced into his hand. Across from him, Carranza's gunman smiled, a wolf enjoying the hunt. The boy had never killed, never even held a gun, but Carranza's law was absolute, duel or die screaming. The shot rang out, Mateo fell, and somewhere in the distant hills a man named Ross Logan heard the news and began his long ride toward vengeance. This is a story of blood, betrayal, and one man's relentless hunt for justice. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The heat shimmered off the hardpan like water that would never come. Ross Logan sat his horse on a ridge overlooking what remained of the Martinez ranch, watching smoke curl lazy from a chimney that shouldn't still be standing. Everything else was ash and memory. 3 days' hard riding had brought him here, following rumors that moved faster than any horse, whispers of a gang that split like mercury when pursued, reformed when needed, and left nothing but graves in their wake. Carranza's band. The name alone made men reach for weapons they didn't have, made women hide their daughters, made whole towns go silent when strangers asked questions. Logan didn't ask questions. He listened. His horse, a steel-gray gelding with one white sock, shifted beneath him, patient, like its rider. Logan's hands rested easy on the saddle horn, calloused fingers relaxed, but his eyes missed nothing. The broken corral fence, the scattered chickens pecking at dirt too hard to give up seeds. The way the door to the ranch house hung crooked, like someone had kicked it in and nobody had cared enough to fix it, or been alive to care. He touched his heels to the gelding and started down the slope. The sun was past its peak now, slanting toward evening, and Logan preferred to arrive places with light still in the sky. Darkness had its uses, but this wasn't a killing visit. Not yet. The chickens scattered as he approached, their panic brief and forgotten. Logan dismounted slow, keeping his hands visible, and looped the reins over what was left of the hitching post. The wood was scorched black on one side. Recent fire. Within the month. "That's far enough, mister." The voice came from the shadowed doorway. Young, trying for hard, and not quite making it. Logan stopped, arms loose at his sides, giving the speaker time to see he wasn't reaching for the colt on his hip. "Just looking for water," Logan said. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that made people lean in to hear. "For me and the horse. Can pay." A boy stepped into the light. Couldn't be more than 16, holding a shotgun that had seen better decades. His hands shook just enough to make the weapon dangerous in the wrong way, the way that killed by accident instead of intention. "We don't want trouble," the boy said. The shotgun's barrel wavered between Logan's chest and the ground, like it couldn't decide which target was more threatening. "Neither do I." "You carrying?" "Yes." The honesty seemed to surprise the boy. His eyes flickered to Logan's gun belt, then back to his face. Looking for something. Logan knew what. Every man who'd seen violence carried it in his eyes, and every boy who hadn't kept searching for it, trying to learn the difference between killers and men who'd simply survived. "You can water the horse at the trough," the boy said finally. "It's around back, but you leave before dark. My mama doesn't want strangers after sunset." Logan nodded, slow and deliberate. "Appreciate it." He led the gelding around the corner of the house, aware of the shotgun tracking him until he passed from view. The trough was there, half full with water that had a skin of dust on top but would do fine. The horse drank deep while Logan studied the back of the property. More signs of violence, a burned-out barn, its skeleton ribs black against the sky. Graves. 4 of them, marked with crude wooden crosses. Fresh-turned earth that hadn't settled yet, and boot prints everywhere, overlapping, coming and going in patterns that told a story if you knew how to read it. A dozen men, maybe more. They'd come from the south, split into 2 groups. One hit the barn, the other the house. Fast and brutal. Military precision from men who'd never served in any army that followed rules. Carranza. "You a lawman?" Logan turned. A woman stood in the back doorway now, wiping her hands on an apron that had once been white. She was maybe 40, maybe older. The desert aged people like it aged wood, stripping away everything soft until only the grain remained. Her face was hard-lined, her eyes harder, and she held a kitchen knife with the comfort of someone who'd used it for more than cooking. "No, ma'am." "Bounty hunter?" "No." She studied him the way he'd studied the property, looking for truth in the details. His clothes were trail-worn but cared for. His gun was clean but not fancy. His horse was good stock, well-fed, the kind of animal a man invested in when he expected to rely on it. "But you're hunting something," she said. Not a question. "Someone." She nodded, like this confirmed something she'd already known. "Diego," she called, not taking her eyes off Logan. "Put the gun up. This one's different." The boy, Diego, appeared behind her, the shotgun now pointed at the ground. He looked between his mother and Logan, confused by the sudden shift. "Come inside," the woman said. "You'll want to hear what I have to say. And I'll want to hear why a man with your kind of eyes is looking for Carranza." Logan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those eyes, the briefest flash of recognition that she'd named the demon he was hunting. "Never said I was looking for anyone named Carranza." "Didn't have to." She turned and walked into the house, expecting him to follow. "Only two kinds of men come through here anymore. His and men looking for his. You're not his. That makes you the other." The inside of the house was darker, cooler, and smelled of cornmeal and coffee. A small girl, maybe 8, peered at Logan from behind a doorway before her mother shooed her back. The furniture was simple, handmade, some of it patched where bullets had torn through during the attack. The woman, she introduced herself as Teresa Martinez, poured coffee without asking if he wanted any and pushed a tin cup across the scarred wooden table. Logan sat, keeping his gun hand free out of habit, though he sensed no threat here, only exhaustion, the kind that came from holding things together when everything wanted to fall apart. "My husband is in one of those graves out back," Teresa said, settling into a chair across from him. "My brother in another, 2 ranch hands in the others. Carranza's men came 3 weeks ago. Said we owed taxes for being on their land." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "This land has been in my husband's family for 60 years. Before that, it was open range nobody wanted. Now they call it theirs." Diego stood by the door, the shotgun propped against the wall but within reach. The boy's eyes were old, too old. Logan had seen that look before, on soldiers who'd survived battles that killed their friends. The loss of innocence left a mark. "How many men?" Logan asked. 12 that I counted. Could have been more waiting down the road." Teresa sipped her coffee. "They wanted money we didn't have. My husband tried to reason with them, tried to explain we'd had a drought, that the cattle were thin, that we'd pay when we could. They didn't care. They cared about making an example. That's what their leader said, a man with a scar here." She drew a line from her ear to her jaw. "And gold teeth that caught the sun when he smiled. He said examples were important in business." "That's Carranza's lieutenant, man named Vega. Where's Carranza himself?" Teresa shook her head. "Nobody sees Carranza. He's like smoke, everywhere and nowhere. But his men are real enough. They burned the barn, shot my husband when he tried to stop them, killed the others when they fought back." Her voice was steady, factual, but her hands trembled around the coffee cup. "Diego hid his sister in the root cellar, saved her life. Maybe saved mine too, because I stopped fighting when I realized they might go looking for more people to kill." The room fell silent except for the buzzing of a fly against the window glass. Outside, the geldings snorted and stamped, comfortable in the shade. 3 weeks ago, you said." Logan's voice was quiet. "They been back?" "Twice. Once to take what little food we had left. Once to—" She glanced at Diego, seemed to reconsider her words, to remind us that we're alive by their mercy, not our own strength. "And the law?" Teresa's laugh was hollow. "The law is 50 miles away in a town that doesn't care about Mexican ranchers on the wrong side of nowhere. We sent Diego riding. He came back 3 days later. The sheriff said it was outside his jurisdiction, said we should move somewhere safer." Her eyes flashed anger finally, breaking through the exhaustion. "This is our home. Was our home. Now I don't know what it is." Logan drank the coffee. It was strong, bitter, good. He set the cup down and looked at Teresa with those calm, dangerous eyes, that had made her recognize him for what he was. "I'm looking for Carranza," he said. "Not for the law, not for money. For personal reasons that end with him dead." Diego straightened at that, his young face showing interest for the first time. Teresa just nodded. "You're not the first to say that. 2 men came through here last month talking about vengeance and justice. We found their bodies a week later, tied to crosses near the mission. Carranza doesn't just kill people who come for him. He makes art out of them." "I'm not like them." "No," Teresa agreed. "I can see that. But it doesn't matter how good you are with that gun, senor. Carranza has 40 men, maybe 50. They scatter like roaches when threatened, but they come back. Always come back. And they learn. Every man who tries for Carranza teaches them something new about how to kill the next one." Logan stood, adjusting his hat. "I appreciate the water and the coffee and the warning." "You're still going?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then at least tell me why. What did Carranza take from you?" Logan was quiet for a long moment, his hand on the door frame, his back to them. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before, but no less certain. "Everything that mattered." He was halfway to his horse when Diego caught up to him, moving quick and quiet despite his size. "Mister, wait." Logan turned. The boy held something in his hands, a piece of paper, folded and refolded until the creases were soft as cloth. "There's a woman," Diego said, speaking fast like he might lose his courage. "Elena Cruz. She was traveling through with her father when Carranza's men took them. Her father they killed, but her—" He swallowed hard. "They kept her. Took her south toward the canyon country. I heard them talking about it when they came back the second time, laughing about how Vega claimed her for his own." Logan took the paper. It was a drawing, crude but clear, a map showing canyons, a river, crosses marking what might be camps or graves. "Where did you get this?" "I followed them, after the second time. I wanted to—" Diego's voice cracked. "I wanted to kill them, all of them, but I couldn't. I don't know how to—" "You kept your mother and sister alive," Logan said. "That took more courage than killing." "Courage doesn't feel like being afraid all the time." "It never does." Logan studied the map, committing it to memory before folding it and tucking it into his shirt pocket. "This woman, Elena, you know her?" "I met her once at the market in Las Cruces. She was kind. Gave my sister a ribbon when she saw her admiring it. Didn't ask for payment, just smiled and said pretty girls should have pretty things." Diego's jaw tightened. "She doesn't deserve what they're doing to her." "No one does." "Will you help her, if you find her?" Logan met the boy's eyes. "If she's alive, I'll get her out." "And Carranza?" "He's going to die, but not quick, not easy." Logan swung into the saddle, the leather creaking familiar beneath him. "When it's done, I'll come back through this way, let you know it's finished." Diego nodded, then reached up and gripped Logan's stirrup. "The crosses on the map, one of them is where they buried a chest. I saw them dig it up the night I followed them, then bury it again somewhere else. I couldn't see exactly where in the dark, but it's near the third canyon, the one that branches like a snake's tongue. They argued about it. Vega wanted to take it all, but one of the others said Carranza would know, said the boss counts everything twice. Treasure makes men stupid, Logan observed. Makes them greedy. Greedy men make mistakes. Will you take it? After? Don't care about it, but if there's anything left when I'm done, I'll see it finds its way back to people it was stolen from." Logan gathered the reins. "Keep that shotgun loaded. Keep your family close. And if you hear I'm dead, take them north. Don't wait to see if Carranza remembers you exist." He rode out the way he'd come, the sun lower now, painting the desert in shades of amber and blood. Teresa watched from the doorway until he was gone, her son beside her. "Do you think he'll do it?" Diego asked. "Kill Carranza?" Teresa was quiet for a moment, remembering those eyes, calm on the surface, but underneath something cold and absolute as winter. "I think," she said slowly, "that we just met the most dangerous man either of us will ever see, and I pity anyone who gets in his way." The mission at San Rafael was dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with the slow resignation of something that had outlived its purpose. The adobe walls were crumbling, the bell tower empty of bells, and the courtyard where monks once walked in contemplation now hosted only lizards and the occasional scorpion. Logan had ridden through the night, changing his plans after Diego's information. If Elena Cruz was alive and being held in the canyon country, time mattered. The map showed 3 possible locations, but only one had both water and cover, the kind of place men would choose to hole up while waiting for orders. He'd stopped at the mission because it was on the way, and because old places like this sometimes held information. Travelers carved their names in walls, outlaws left marks to signal to others, and priests, even abandoned ones, heard things that lawmen never would. He found the priest in what remained of the chapel, sweeping dirt that would just blow back in with the next wind. The old man looked up as Logan's shadow fell across the threshold, and his face showed neither surprise nor fear. "Good evening, my son." "Father?" It's been a long time since anyone called me that with respect. The priest set aside his broom. He was thin, ancient, with hands like bird claws and eyes that had seen too much. "But you're welcome here, stranger. We have little, but what we have, we share." Logan stepped inside. The chapel was bare of everything except dust and memory. The altar had been stripped, the santos stolen, even the cross was gone. But someone, probably this old man, had drawn a cross in charcoal on the back wall, and a few wildflowers sat in a clay pot beneath it. "I'm looking for information about a gang, men led by someone called Carranza." The priest's expression didn't change, but something died in his eyes. The last ember of hope, maybe, or the last illusion that this conversation would be about anything but violence. "Everyone is looking for Carranza," the priest said. "The law, the lawless. Men seeking revenge, men seeking fortune. None of them find what they're searching for." He gestured to the wall behind Logan. "See?" Logan turned. The wall was covered in names, carved and scratched and burned into the adobe, dozens of them, maybe 100, and beneath each name, a date. "They all came through here," the priest said, "all hunting the same monster, some alone, some in groups. That one there, James McCready, he brought 15 men. Good men," he said. "Experienced. They rode out confident as crusaders." The old man touched the name gently. "The coyotes found them 2 weeks later, what was left of them." "How long has Carranza been operating?" 3 years, maybe 4. Time blurs when you're old and alone. The priest moved to a small table where he kept a Bible, the only book left in the mission. He appeared like a plague. First just rumors, then bodies, then whole families disappearing. The authorities tried to stop him at first. They sent soldiers. The soldiers came back without their weapons, without their pride, carrying messages carved into their own skin. What kind of messages? That this territory belonged to Carranza now. That anyone who challenged him would learn the meaning of suffering. That the law ended where his shadow began. The priest opened the Bible, though Logan suspected he wasn't looking for scripture. "He's not just a bandit, you understand. He's something worse. He's organized, disciplined. He has men in towns, men in the government, men in places you'd never suspect. He knows things before they happen, arrives before traps can be sprung. It's like fighting a ghost that can read minds." Logan thought about that. Organization took intelligence. Discipline took control. Neither of those things came from chaos. They came from a leader who understood strategy. "Tell me about his men, the ones people see." "Ah." The priest closed the Bible. "Vega is his right hand, beautiful as a serpent, cruel as winter. He's the one who does Carranza's wet work, the public demonstrations. He enjoys it, has a taste for it that goes beyond business." He paused. "There's another one, Ramirez. He's different, quiet, professional. He doesn't kill for pleasure. He kills because it's his job. Some say he's former military, some say he's former law. All that matters is he's very, very good at what he does." "And Carranza himself?" The priest's laugh was dry as sand. "I've been here 4 years. In that time, I've spoken to maybe 200 people who've encountered his gang. You know how many have actually seen Carranza's face?" "Tell me." 3. and they couldn't agree on what he looked like. One said he was tall, thin, with a beard. Another said he was short, stocky, clean-shaven. The third said he wore a mask, always, and never spoke above a whisper. The old man shook his head. He's a myth that bleeds, a story that kills, and the more people who die trying to prove he's real, the more powerful the myth becomes. Logan walked to the wall of names, ran his finger across them. James McCready, William Tate, Jose Hernandez, Samuel Cross. Children and old men, judging by some of the dates. 20 years between the oldest and youngest. All of them dead now. All of them believing they could be the one to end this. You think I'm here to add my name to this wall, aren't you? No. Logan turned back to the priest. I'm here to finish what all of them started, but I'm not doing it the way they did. And what way is that? They hunted him like he was an animal, but he's not. He's a man who built a system. You don't kill a system by cutting off one head. You destroy it from the inside. Make it tear itself apart. The priest studied Logan with new interest. You sound like you've done this before. Different war, same principles. The war is over, son. For some people. Logan moved toward the door, then paused. The woman they're holding, Elena Cruz. You know anything about her? The priest's face softened. She came through here 5 weeks ago with her father, good people. He was taking her to family in California, away from the violence. They stayed one night, prayed in this chapel. He gestured to the flowers beneath the charcoal cross. She left those, said every sacred place deserves beauty, even if the world has forgotten it. She's alive? As of 3 days ago, yes. A boy from the Lopez Ranch came through. He'd seen her being moved from one canyon camp to another. She was, the priest chose his words carefully. She was walking on her own, not broken, not yet. Logan absorbed this. 3 days. That meant the map Diego had given him might still be accurate, might still lead him to her before they moved again. If I bring her out, she'll need sanctuary. Somewhere safe until things settle. Bring her here. It's not much, but it's hidden. Forgotten. Carranza's men haven't bothered with this place in over a year. There's nothing left to take, no one left to terrorize. The priest met Logan's eyes. But you should know, saving one woman won't stop him. Won't even slow him down. She's property to them, nothing more. They have others. I know. Then why? Logan was quiet for a moment, his hand on the doorframe, looking out at the desert turning purple in the dusk. Because the boy who drew me that map needed to know that not everyone who rides into darkness fails to come back. Because a woman who leaves flowers in abandoned chapels deserves better than what she's getting. And because... He trailed off. Because, the priest prompted gently, because before I tear down Carranza's entire world, I want him to know what it feels like to lose something he thought he owned. The priest nodded slowly. Be careful, son. Revenge is a poison that kills the vessel carrying it. I'm already dead, Father. I'm just settling accounts before I admit it. Logan rode out as the last light bled from the sky, leaving the old priest standing in the doorway of his dying mission, watching another man ride toward what would probably be his grave. But this time, the priest thought, this time might be different. This one had the eyes. The canyon country started 20 miles south of the mission, where the flat scrubland suddenly broke apart into a maze of stone and shadow. Wind and water had carved these canyons over millennia, creating passages that twisted back on themselves, dead ends that looked like throughways, and hidden camps that could shelter 50 men or hide one woman from an army. Logan studied the terrain from a ridge as dawn broke. The map Diego had drawn showed 3 canyons branching off from a main artery, the Snake's Tongue the boy had mentioned. Logan could see them now, 2 obvious ones and a third that was almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The third canyon. That's where they'd be. He'd left his horse hobbled in a stand of cottonwoods near a spring and continued on foot as the sun climbed. The canyon walls rose on either side, red stone striped with white and black, ancient as bones. His footsteps were silent on the sandy floor, and he moved with the patience of someone who'd learned long ago that rushing got you killed. A mile in, he found the first sign, horse droppings, fresh enough to still be soft. 4 horses, maybe 5. moving slow, not in any hurry. That fit with what he expected. Men guarding a prisoner didn't rush. They settled in, got comfortable, let their guard down. Another half-mile and he smelled smoke. Mesquite, burning low. Cooking fire, probably. He slowed further, using every rock and shadow, until he could hear voices echoing off the canyon walls. Spanish. 2 men, maybe 3. Arguing about cards. Logan bellied up to a boulder and peered around its edge. The camp was exactly what he'd expected. A wide spot in the canyon where a spring fed a small pool, a few scrubby trees providing shade, and 4 men sitting around a fire that had burned down to coals. 3 were playing cards. The 4th was standing watch. But his attention was on the game, not the canyon entrance. And against the far wall, hands bound, sitting in the shade with her knees drawn up, was Elena Cruz. Even from a distance, Logan could see she was exactly as the priest had described, not broken. Her dress was torn and dirty, her face bruised, but she sat with her back straight and her eyes alert. Watching. Waiting. Surviving. The men were Carranza's, no doubt. They had that casual brutality that came from knowing they were protected by something bigger than themselves. Their weapons were good quality, their horses well-fed. These weren't desperate outlaws scraping by. These were soldiers in a profitable army. Logan counted guns. 3 pistols visible, 2 rifles propped against a saddle, knives on every belt. Good odds for most men trying a rescue. Logan wasn't most men. He waited. Patience was a weapon too, one that most people forgot about. He waited through the card game, through the changing of the guard, through the long afternoon heat that made the men sluggish and careless. He waited until the sun was low and their bellies were full, and one of them had broken out a bottle of mezcal that was making its way around the circle. Then he moved. The guard who'd rotated to watch duty was young, maybe 25, and he'd made the mistake of standing with his back to the canyon wall, watching his friends drink. He never heard Logan come up behind him, just felt the arm around his throat and the pressure that sent him into darkness without a sound. Logan lowered him quietly, took his pistol and his knife, and faded back into the shadows. 1 down, 3 to go. The next was easier. He'd wandered away from the fire to relieve himself against a boulder, his rifle left behind with his friends. Logan's knife was quick and silent, and the man slumped forward without making more noise than the water had made hitting stone. 2 down. The remaining 2 were the problem. They sat across from each other at the fire, the bottle between them, but they were far enough apart that Logan couldn't take them both at once without risking one raising an alarm. He needed them closer. Logan picked up a stone and threw it hard against the canyon wall. It cracked loud in the stillness, echoing like a gunshot. The 2 men jumped up, hands going to weapons, looking toward the sound. They moved together instinctively, covering each other, professional even drunk. Logan respected that, even as he prepared to kill them for it. They came toward his position, moving cautious now, the alcohol burned off by adrenaline. Logan waited until they were 5 feet from his hiding spot, then stepped out with the rifle he'd taken from the second guard. "Don't!" The words stopped them cold. They froze, hands halfway to their guns, eyes going wide as they realized they'd been outmaneuvered. "Hands up, slow." They obeyed, but Logan could see them thinking, calculating, looking for an opening. "You're making a mistake, amigo," the older one said. His Spanish was smooth, educated. "You know who we ride for?" "Carranza." "Then you know killing us brings trouble you can't imagine." "I can imagine plenty." Logan gestured with the rifle. "Guns on the ground, slow, 2 fingers only." They did it, but the younger one was smiling now. Not nervous, confident. That was wrong. That meant, "You're not alone," the older one said, and the smile spread to his face too. "Are you, friend?" The click of a hammer being cocked came from behind Logan's left ear. "Drop it," a voice said, "or I paint these rocks with your thoughts." Logan should have checked behind him, should have made sure the 4th man was really unconscious and not playing possum. Amateur mistake. Fatal mistake. He let the rifle fall. "Smart." The voice came closer, and Logan felt the pistol press against the base of his skull. "Now turn around, slow. I want to see what kind of fool walks into a Carranza camp alone." Logan turned. The man holding the gun on him was the first one he'd taken down, except he hadn't taken him down at all. He'd faked it, plain unconscious, waiting to see how the play developed. Professional, disciplined. This was Ramirez. Had to be. Vega's going to enjoy this, Ramirez said. He was 40-something, gray at the temples, with eyes that showed no emotion at all. A craftsman at work. He likes it when they're fighters, makes it more interesting when he breaks them. Where is Vega? Logan asked. His voice was calm, conversational. Wouldn't you like to know? The younger man had retrieved his pistol now, and he stepped forward with it raised. Maybe we should soften you up first. Let you think about what's coming. Carlos, no. Ramirez's voice was sharp. Carranza wants anyone stupid enough to come for the girl brought in alive. He has questions about who sent them, what they know, who else is coming. I work alone. Sure you do. Ramirez smiled, cold as winter. That's what they all say. Right before Vega starts asking in his special way. Movement at the edge of Logan's vision. Elena had stood up, her bound hands in front of her, watching this play out with an expression Logan couldn't read. Sit down, puta, Carlos snapped at her. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerns her, Logan said quietly. That's why I'm here. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. You know her? No. Then why? Because she was kind to a little girl once, gave her a ribbon, didn't ask for anything back. Logan met Ramirez's eyes. Because the world needs to remember that kindness matters, even when monsters like you try to make it forget. The older man from the card game, he'd been silent until now, suddenly laughed. Jesus Cristo, this one's crazy. He came all this way for a woman he doesn't even know because she gave some kid a ribbon? You wouldn't understand, Logan said. No, I really wouldn't. The man spat into the fire. Which is why you're going to die screaming and I'm going to die rich. Enough, Ramirez gestured with his gun. Tie him up. We move at first light. Vega's camped at the main canyon, 20 miles east. He'll want to handle this personally. Carlos moved forward with rope, but Elena spoke for the first time, her voice clear and strong despite everything she'd been through. You're all going to die. The men turned to look at her. What did you say? Carlos demanded. I said you're all going to die. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But this man, she looked at Logan, he's not like the others. The others came with anger, with revenge. He came with something colder, something patient, and men like him don't fail. Crazy bitch, Carlos muttered. But Logan saw doubt flicker across the faces of the others. Doubt was a weapon too. She's right, Logan said softly. I'm not here by accident. I'm not here because I'm brave or stupid. I'm here because I've spent 3 months learning everything about Carranza's operation. Every camp, every route, every man. I know about the treasure buried in 3 locations. I know about the supplies hidden near Las Cruces. I know about the town mayor who takes Carranza's money. I know about the army captain who warns him when patrols are coming. Ramirez's gun didn't waver, but his expression changed. You're bluffing. Am I? Then explain how I found this camp when it's not on any map. Explain how I knew you'd only have 4 men here instead of the usual 6. Explain how I knew Vega was 20 miles east at the main canyon. Logan smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I've been 3 steps ahead of you since I started. The only mistake I made was underestimating you, Ramirez. That won't happen again. Tie him, Ramirez started to say. The knife Logan had taken from the second guard was in his hand and flying before anyone could react. It took Carlos in the throat, just above the collarbone, and the young man went down choking on his own blood. Logan was moving before Carlos hit the ground, diving low as Ramirez fired. The bullet cracked past where his head had been, and Logan came up with the pistol he'd palmed from the first man, the one he'd pretended to drop with the rifle. 2 shots. Ramirez and the older man went down. Silence, except for Carlos's wet gurgling as he died. Logan stood, checked the bodies to make sure they weren't faking this time, and then walked to where Elena sat against the canyon wall. She'd watched the entire thing without screaming, without looking away. Are you hurt? He asked. Bruises, nothing broken. Her voice was steady. You're bleeding. Logan touched his side where Ramirez's bullet had grazed him. The wound was shallow but messy. "I'll live." He cut her bonds with the knife he'd retrieved from Carlos's throat. Elena rubbed her wrists where the rope had burned them, then stood on shaky legs. "Who are you?" "Ross Logan." "Why did you come for me?" He'd answered this question already to the men now lying dead. But he answered it again, for her. "Because a boy drew me a map and asked me to. Because a priest said you deserved better. Because—" He trailed off, then finished honestly. "Because I needed to remember there are still things worth saving in this world." Elena looked at the bodies, at the blood soaking into the sand, at this quiet stranger who'd killed 4 men with the efficiency of someone doing routine work. "You're going after Carranza," she said. Not a question. "Yes." "Then I'm coming with you." "No." "You don't get to decide that." Her eyes flashed anger for the first time. "They killed my father, beat him to death while I watched because he tried to protect me. Then they dragged me through hell for weeks, passing me around like property. I've earned the right to see Carranza die." Logan studied her, saw the steel beneath the surface, saw what the priest had meant when he said she wasn't broken. "It's going to get worse before it gets better," he warned. "What I'm planning, it's not clean, not honorable. I'm going to make them turn on each other, make them destroy themselves from the inside. It's going to be ugly." "Good." Elena's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Ugly is what they deserve." Logan nodded slowly. "There's a mission, San Rafael. A priest there will keep you safe until—" "No!" She cut him off. "I told you. I'm coming with you. You can tie me up like they did, but I'll just follow you anyway. Or you can accept that I can help. I've been in their camps. I know their routines. I know which men are loyal and which ones whisper about taking over. I know things you don't." She was right, and Logan had learned long ago that pride was just another way to get killed. "All right," he said, "but you follow my lead. When I say run, you run. When I say hide, you hide. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about survival." Agreed. They gathered what supplies they needed: food, water, weapons, ammunition. Logan took Ramirez's pistol and gun belt. The man had been professional enough to keep his weapons clean and his ammunition dry. Tools of the trade. As they prepared to leave, Elena paused by Ramirez's body. "He was going to take me to Vega," she said softly. "Said Vega was looking forward to finishing what he started. Said I'd learn to beg for death before he was done." Logan checked the rifle one more time. "Vega's next on the list." "And after Vega?" "After Vega, I'm going to do something that no one's tried before. I'm going to walk straight into Carranza's stronghold and offer to join his gang." Elena stared at him. "That's insane." "Yes. They'll kill you. Maybe, or maybe they'll see an opportunity. I'm going to give them the one thing they can't resist, a reason to tear each other apart fighting over me." "How?" Logan smiled that cold, patient smile that made him look like something carved from stone. "I'm going to tell them the truth. That I've killed 6 of their men in 2 days. That I'm the best tracker and fighter they've ever seen. And that I know where all 3 treasure caches are buried." He started walking toward where he'd left his horse, Elena following. Greed makes men stupid. Fear makes them paranoid. And when you combine the two, men like Carranza's lieutenants start seeing threats everywhere, including in each other. You're going to make them destroy themselves. Yes. So they walked in silence for a while, the canyon walls rising on either side, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky above. "Logan," Elena said finally, "what did Carranza take from you? Why are you really here?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, just as they reached the cottonwood grove where his horse waited, "A boy, 15 years old. Carranza forced him into a duel for sport, for entertainment. The boy had never held a gun, never hurt anyone. But Carranza's law is absolute." Logan's voice was quiet, emotionless. But Elena heard something underneath, something broken beyond repair. They made him stand across from one of Carranza's best gunmen, made him draw, made him try to live. And they shot him, not to kill quick, to kill slow, to make it hurt, to make it last. Logan looked up at the stars, and in the faint light, Elena saw his eyes were wet. He died calling for help that never came. Died alone. Died afraid. Elena's throat tightened. Who was he to you? My brother. The only family I had left. I was 2 days away when it happened, delivering cattle to a buyer in Arizona. By the time I got back, his hands clenched into fists. By the time I got back, there wasn't even a body to bury. Carranza's men had left him for the coyotes. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry doesn't balance the scales. Logan looked at her, and Elena saw what the priest had seen, what Teresa Martinez had seen, what everyone who met this quiet man eventually saw, death walking in human skin, patient and certain as sunrise. But justice will. Justice, and making sure that every single person who laughed while my brother died understands what it means to be afraid. They rode through the night, Logan on his gray gelding and Elena on one of the horses from the canyon camp. Behind them, 4 bodies cooled in the darkness, the first casualties in a war that Carranza didn't yet know he was fighting. But he would learn. They always did. The main canyon opened up before them 3 days later, a vast cathedral of stone carved by ancient waters and painted in layers of rust and gold by the rising sun. Logan and Elena had traveled hard, stopping only when the horses needed rest, speaking little but learning to read each other's silences. She'd proven herself capable, never complaining, never slowing him down, her eyes constantly scanning the terrain the way someone who'd survived hell learned to watch for the next danger. They'd circled wide around 2 of Carranza's patrol routes, information Elena had picked up during her captivity. The men talked freely around her, assuming a woman was no threat, that she was broken enough not to matter. They'd been wrong on both counts. Now they sat their horses on a ridge overlooking what had once been a mining camp and was now something else entirely. Fortified, organized, a town built on stolen wealth and held together by fear. That's Vega's tent, Elena said quietly, pointing to a large canvas structure near the center of the camp. The red and black one. He likes people to know where he is, likes the fear it brings. Logan counted 20 men moving through the camp, maybe more in the tents and buildings, armed, alert. This wasn't a gang, it was an army. Ramirez should have reported in by now, he observed. They'll know something's wrong. Will they come looking? No, that's not how Carranza operates. He doesn't chase problems. He waits for them to come to him, then crushes them as an example. Logan studied the camp's layout, memorizing entrances, exits, sight lines. But he'll be ready now, expecting someone. Then walking in there is suicide. Walking in unprepared is suicide. Walking in with something they want, that's negotiation. He turned his horse away from the ridge. We need leverage. The treasure. Part of it, and we need to make sure certain people know we have it. Logan's mind was working through possibilities, discarding plans that had too many variables, keeping the ones that played on human nature. Greed. Ambition. The secret desire every lieutenant had to be more than a second in command. They rode to the third canyon, the one Diego's map had marked with a cross and a question mark. The boy had seen them move something here but couldn't pinpoint exactly where. Logan hoped the landmarks would be enough. It took 6 hours of searching before Elena found it, a cluster of rocks that looked natural until you realized they'd been placed, not fallen. Together they moved the stones, and underneath, wrapped in oiled canvas, was a chest. Logan pried it open. Gold coins caught the light, silver ingots, a scattering of jewelry that had probably been torn from the throats and fingers of people now dead. Enough wealth to buy a ranch, a future, a new life somewhere far from this blood-soaked territory. We could just take it and run, Elena said softly. Head north, start over. Yes, but we're not going to. No. Logan closed the chest. Because running doesn't stop Carranza, doesn't save the next family he decides to destroy, doesn't bring back the people already gone. Elena knelt beside the chest, her fingers trailing across the tarnished silver. My father spent his whole life building his freight business. He was honest, fair. He paid his workers well and never cheated a customer. And they beat him to death in the dirt while he begged them to let me go. Her voice broke slightly. All this wealth, all this power Carranza has, it's built on the bones of good people. People like my father. Then help me tear it down. She looked up at him, and in her eyes, Logan saw the same cold certainty he felt burning in his own chest. The kind that came from crossing a line you could never uncross, from accepting that justice sometimes wore the face of vengeance. Tell me the plan. Logan sat down on a flat rock, his hat tilted back, the sun warm on his face. Vega is Carranza's enforcer. Brutal, flashy, the face the gang shows to the world. But he's not the brains. That's Ramirez, or was before I killed him. The third key player is a man named Delgado, runs the business side, negotiates with corrupt officials, moves the stolen goods, manages the money. How do you know all this? 3 months of listening. Every bartender, every stable hand, every woman who washes clothes in the river, they all talk. You just have to know how to listen. Logan picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt. Vega wants to be Carranza. He's loyal now because he's treated well, but underneath he's ambitious. Thinks he could run things better, more aggressive, more violent. And Delgado? Delgado is practical. He doesn't care who's in charge as long as the money keeps flowing. He'd work for Vega if Vega could actually take control. But he knows Carranza keeps them separated, balanced against each other, so neither gets strong enough to threaten him. Elena studied the crude map Logan was sketching. So you're going to make them fight each other. Not just fight, I'm going to make them paranoid. Make each one think the others are plotting against them. Make them see betrayal in every shadow. Logan drew 3 circles in the dirt, then lines connecting them. Right now, they're strong because they're united under Carranza's leadership. But what happens when they stop trusting each other? When Vega thinks Delgado is skimming money? When Delgado thinks Vega is planning a coup? When both of them wonder if Carranza knows about their private ambitions? The whole thing collapses. Yes, but it has to be done carefully. One wrong move and they circle the wagons, get stronger instead of weaker. Logan erased the drawing with his boot. That's why we're taking the treasure. We're going to make them think one of their own found it and is hiding it. Plant evidence, create suspicion. How? Logan smiled. We're going to pay Vega a visit, tonight, and we're going to give him a gift he can't refuse. The moon was a sliver of silver when they approached Vega's camp. They'd left the horses a mile back, hobbled and quiet, and moved on foot through the darkness. Elena had wanted to come, but Logan had convinced her to wait at a fallback position with the treasure. If this went wrong, someone needed to survive to tell the tale. The camp was quieter now, most men asleep except for 2 guards walking a lazy perimeter. They weren't expecting trouble. Not here, not in the heart of their territory. That confidence would cost them. Logan waited until the guards crossed paths and turned away from each other, then moved like smoke through the darkness. The first guard died with a hand over his mouth and a knife between his ribs. Logan lowered him gently, then circled around to where the second guard stood yawning. This one heard something. A scuff of boot on stone, maybe, or just instinct warning him. He turned, hand going to his pistol, mouth opening to shout. Logan's thrown knife took him in the throat. The guard made a wet, choking sound and collapsed. 2 down. 20 more sleeping in the camp. And somewhere in that red and black tent, Vega dreamed of empire. Logan moved through the camp like a ghost, pausing beside sleeping men, checking their faces against descriptions he'd gathered. He found what he was looking for near Vega's tent, a man sleeping apart from the others, his clothes finer, his weapons better maintained. This was Delgado's representative, sent to coordinate with Vega on moving the next shipment of stolen goods. Perfect. Logan knelt beside the sleeping man and pressed a knife to his throat. The man's eyes snapped open, terror flooding them as he felt the blade. Make a sound, and you die, Logan whispered. Understand? The man nodded frantically. Good. Now listen very carefully. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them honestly. If I think you're lying, even once, I'll cut your throat and move on to the next person. Clear? Another nod. Where does Delgado keep his personal records? The ones he doesn't share with Carranza? The man's eyes widened. Answering this was betrayal, but the knife was so sharp and Logan's eyes were so cold. There's a cave, north of here, 3 miles, near a dead cottonwood that lightning struck. He keeps books there, Records of what he tells Carranza versus what he actually collects. Is he skimming? A hesitation, then a tiny nod. Everyone skims a little. It's expected. But Delgado, he's been taking more, building his own nest egg, in case things go bad. Smart man. Logan's knife didn't waver. Now, tell me about the treasure, the caches. How many does Carranza really have? 5. But only Carranza knows where all of them are. He tells Delgado about one, Vega about another, keeps 3 to himself. Nobody knows the full picture except him. And if someone found one of the caches, took it, the man's laugh was bitter and scared. They'd die, slowly. Carranza doesn't forgive theft, especially from his own men. Logan absorbed this, then asked the question he'd come here for. Has anyone been acting strange lately? Nervous? Like they're hiding something? Vega's been in a mood, angry all the time. He thinks Carranza doesn't appreciate him enough, that he does all the hard work while Carranza sits back and counts money. The words came faster now, terror and relief mixing as the man realized cooperation might keep him alive. 2 weeks ago, Vega asked me what I'd do if Carranza died. Said it was hypothetical, but the way he looked at me, he was testing loyalty. Yes, and I told him I'd serve whoever paid best, because that's what Delgado would want me to say. Logan lifted the knife from the man's throat. You're going to do something for me. Tomorrow you're going to casually mention to Vega that you saw Ramirez acting suspicious before he left for the canyon camp, that he was asking questions about the treasure locations, that he seemed too interested in Carranza's schedules. But Ramirez is dead. You killed him. Vega doesn't know that yet. And when he finds out, he's going to wonder why Ramirez was asking those questions. Going to wonder if maybe Ramirez was planning something. Going to wonder if maybe Ramirez had a partner. Logan's smile was cold. Plant that seed. Water it with careful words. Make Vega paranoid. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll come back. And next time, I won't ask questions first. Logan stood, melting back into the shadows. Sleep well. He was 10 feet away when the man called out softly, Who are you? Logan paused, barely visible in the darkness. Someone who's already dead, which makes me very dangerous to people who still want to live. He left the camp the way he'd come, retrieving his knives from the dead guards and vanishing into the desert night. By the time the bodies were discovered at dawn, he and Elena were miles away, watching the sunrise over the canyon country. Did it work? Elena asked. We'll know soon enough. If Delgado's man is smart, he'll plant the seed exactly as I told him. If he's stupid, he'll tell Vega everything and we'll have to adjust the plan. And if he tells Carranza? Then we move faster. Logan poured water from his canteen, wetting his bandana and wiping the dust from his face. But I don't think he will. Men like that survive by reading situations and picking the winning side. Right now, he doesn't know which side that is, so he'll play it safe. Do what I said. See what happens. They were right. 3 days later, they watched from a distant ridge as Vega's camp erupted into chaos, men shouting, horses being saddled in a rush, and Vega himself, his scarred face twisted in rage, pointing and giving orders that sent riders thundering in different directions. They found the bodies at the canyon camp, Logan said, and now they're looking for Ramirez, looking for answers. Will they find the treasure cache we emptied? Eventually, and when they do, every suspicious thing Ramirez supposedly did will suddenly make sense. They'll think he stole it, that he was planning to run, that maybe he had help from someone in the organization. Elena watched the distant chaos with grim satisfaction. You're enjoying this? No, but I'm good at it. Logan lowered the spyglass he'd taken from Ramirez. War teaches you things, how to break armies, how to turn allies into enemies, how to make men destroy what they're trying to protect. He was quiet for a moment. I spent 4 years fighting for something I believed in. Now I'm using those same skills for something I can't live without. Revenge. Justice. There's a difference. Is there? Elena turned to look at him. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're burning down their world the way they burned down yours. That's not justice. That's retribution. Logan met her eyes. Maybe. But right now, I don't care what it's called. I care that it works. They moved camp twice in the next week, staying ahead of the search parties Vega sent out. Logan continued his campaign of psychological warfare, leaving signs that someone in the organization was stealing, planning, betraying. A bloodied rag from one of Ramirez's shirts near Delgado's cave. A map with notes in handwriting that resembled Vega's, showing routes to the remaining treasure caches. Small things. Believable things. Things that made paranoid men more paranoid. Elena proved invaluable. She knew the rhythms of the camps, when men changed shifts where they were most vulnerable. Together, they struck again. Not killing, not yet, but stealing. A week's worth of supplies from a cache Vega was guarding. 2 horses from Delgado's personal string. Small losses that added up to a pattern of betrayal. And through it all, Logan watched and waited for the perfect moment to make his move. It came on a Wednesday morning, hot and still, when a rider came thundering into Vega's camp with news that sent the scarred lieutenant into a rage that could be heard across the canyon. Logan and Elena were close enough to hear the shouting, close enough to see Vega grab the messenger and shake him, demanding answers the man didn't have. "What happened?" Elena whispered. Logan listened, then smiled cold and satisfied. Delgado's cave. Someone burned it, all his records, his private treasure, everything he'd been hiding from Carranza. "We didn't do that." "No, but someone did. Maybe one of Delgado's own men, tired of working for someone else's profit. Or maybe Vega sent someone to do it, acting on suspicions we planted." Logan watched Vega storming through the camp. Either way, Delgado is going to think Vega did it, and Vega is going to think Delgado is trying to cover his tracks by claiming someone destroyed evidence. They're going to kill each other. Not yet, but soon. They still need Carranza's approval to move against each other. That's how his system works. He's the final authority, the one who decides who lives and dies. Without that, the whole organization falls apart. Logan stood, brushing dust from his pants. "Which is why it's time for me to meet the man himself." Elena grabbed his arm. "You said you were going to walk in and join them, but if you do that now, while they're all on edge and suspicious, they'll shoot you on sight." "Probably, unless I give them a reason not to." He touched her shoulder gently. "There's a mission, San Rafael. The priest there will—" "I know. You've told me 3 times, and 3 times I've said no." Elena's jaw was set. "Whatever you're planning, I'm part of it. It's too dangerous. Everything's too dangerous. I don't care anymore." She released his arm but held his gaze. "My father taught me that sometimes you have to stand for something, even if it costs you everything. Especially then. He died standing. I won't dishonor that by running now." Logan studied her face, seeing the steel underneath, the unbreakable core that captivity and violence hadn't touched. She reminded him of someone, a woman he'd known during the war, a nurse who'd stayed with wounded soldiers even when the shelling got close, because leaving them felt worse than dying with them. "All right," he said finally, "but when this gets bad, and it will get bad, you do exactly what I say. No hesitation, no questions." Agreed. They broke camp and rode toward Vega's position, but slowly, deliberately, making sure scouts would see them coming. Making sure word would reach the camp before they arrived. Surprise got you killed. Expected arrivals got you conversations. The scouts found them before noon, 4 riders who circled at a distance, rifles ready, trying to decide if 2 people riding openly toward their camp were brave or stupid. Logan raised his hands, showing he wasn't reaching for weapons. "We're here to see Vega. Tell him Ross Logan wants to discuss terms." The scouts looked at each other. The name meant nothing to them. Logan had been careful to stay anonymous, a ghost without identity. But the confidence in his voice, the woman at his side, the fact that he was riding straight into their territory, that meant something. "Dismount," one of the scouts ordered. "Hands where we can see them." Logan and Elena obeyed. The scouts approached cautiously, taking their visible weapons but missing the boot knife Logan had tucked away and the small derringer Elena had hidden in her dress. "You're either the bravest people I've ever met, or the dumbest," one scout said. He was young, maybe 20, with eyes that had seen violence but hadn't grown comfortable with it yet. Neither, Logan said. Just practical. We have information Vega needs about who's been stealing from the caches, about who killed Ramirez, about what's really happening in his organization. That got their attention. The lead scout gestured to his companions. Bind them. Vega will want to hear this personally. They tied Logan and Elena's hands, not tight enough to cut circulation, but firm enough to prevent easy escape. Then they mounted up, 2 scouts leading the horses while 2 more rode behind, guns drawn and ready. The ride to camp took an hour. Logan used the time to observe everything. The guards' rotations, the layout of the tents, the places where men gathered to talk. Information was ammunition, and he was loading his guns. Vega was waiting when they arrived, standing outside his red and black tent with his arms crossed, and that scarred face twisted into an expression of curiosity mixed with contempt. He was exactly as described, beautiful in a predatory way, with dark eyes that missed nothing and a smile that promised pain. Well, well, Vega's voice was smooth, cultured, at odds with the violence everyone said he was capable of. The mystery killer finally shows his face. I expected someone taller, someone more impressive. Disappointed? Logan asked. Intrigued. Vega circled them slowly, studying. You've caused me considerable trouble, Mr. Logan. 4 of my men dead in the canyon, 2 guards here, supplies stolen, confusion sown among the ranks. He stopped in front of Logan. Most people who cause me that much trouble end up decorating the desert. Yet here you are, riding in like you're visiting friends. I'm not here to make friends. Then why are you here? Logan met Vega's eyes without flinching. To offer you something you want more than my death. And what's that? Proof that someone in your organization is betraying Carranza. Proof that the treasure caches are being stolen. And proof that if you don't act soon, you're going to take the blame for all of it. Vega's smile faltered. Explain. Cut me loose first. I'm not having this conversation tied up like a criminal. I came here voluntarily. I'm not a threat. You killed 6 of my men. They were in my way. You're not. Not yet. Logan kept his voice level, reasonable. I'm offering you information that will save your life and probably elevate you to a position of power you've been dreaming about. But I need to know you're smart enough to recognize opportunity when it walks into your camp. Vega considered this, his scarred face unreadable. Then he nodded to one of his men. Cut them loose. But if they move wrong, shoot them. Start with the woman. The ropes fell away. Logan rubbed his wrists, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. Beside him, Elena stood quiet, her eyes never leaving Vega's face. Talk, Vega ordered. Ramirez didn't go to the canyon camp to guard the woman. He went there to meet someone who's been systematically stealing from Carranza's caches and framing others for it. Logan pulled out a piece of paper, one of the forged maps he'd created. I found this near Delgado's burned cave. Recognize the handwriting? Vega took the map, his eyes narrowing as he studied it. This is Ramirez's hand. I'd know it anywhere. He was always making notes, tracking things. He looked up sharply. Where did you really get this? From a dead man who should have burned it before I found him. Logan let that sink in. Ramirez and Delgado were working together. Ramirez provided muscle and information. Delgado provided distribution and cover. Together, they've been skimming for months, maybe longer, building their own empire inside Carranza's. That's a death sentence if true. It's true, and it's worse than you think. Logan pulled out another piece of paper, this one showing numbers, dates, amounts. More forgeries, but based on real information Elena had overhead. Delgado keeps 2 sets of books, one for Carranza, one for himself. The difference between them is about 40,000 in gold, money that should have gone to the organization, money that went into Delgado's private cash instead. Vega's hand tightened on the paper. Where is this cash? Burned. Someone got there first. Maybe Ramirez before I killed him. Maybe Delgado himself destroying evidence. Either way, it's gone now. And Delgado is scrambling to explain the discrepancy to Carranza before someone else does. And you're telling me this why? Out of the goodness of your heart? Logan smiled. I'm telling you this because I want to join Carranza's organization. I'm good at what I do, the best tracker you'll ever meet, the best fighter, the best strategist. I've proven that by surviving this long in your territory and killing your men whenever I needed to. You killed Ramirez, a man I've known for years, and you think I'll just welcome you with open arms? I think you'll recognize that Ramirez was a traitor, that I did you a favor by exposing him. And I think you're smart enough to see that having someone like me on your side is better than having me as an enemy. Logan's voice dropped lower. But more than that, I think you're ambitious enough to see opportunity in chaos. Delgado is vulnerable right now, exposed. If someone were to bring proof of his betrayal to Carranza before Delgado can spin it, that someone would be rewarded, promoted, maybe even positioned to take over more responsibility. The understanding flickered in Vega's eyes, the recognition of what Logan was really offering, not just information, but a path to power. You're saying I should move against Delgado. I'm saying you should protect Carranza from a traitor. What happens after that is between you and him. Vega was quiet, thinking. His men watched nervously, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Finally, the scarred lieutenant spoke. You're either the smartest man I've ever met or the most suicidal. I haven't decided which. He turned to his men. Take them to the holding tent. Feed them. Watch them. If they try to escape, kill them, but don't harm them otherwise. Not yet. What about the woman? One of the guards asked. Vega glanced at Elena, and Logan saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or just cruel amusement. The woman stays with him. For now. Vega smiled. Consider it a courtesy. The last comfort before whatever comes next. They were marched to a canvas tent at the edge of camp and pushed inside. A guard stationed himself outside, rifle across his lap, watching. Elena waited until she was sure they couldn't be overheard, then turned to Logan. He's going to kill us. Eventually, but not yet. He's too curious, too tempted by what I offered. Logan sat down on the ground, his back against a tent pole. He'll send someone to check the story. Maybe ride to Delgado's cave himself, and when he sees the burned records, when he starts adding up the evidence I've planted, he'll start to believe. And then? Then he'll have to make a choice. Report it to Carranza and risk looking incompetent for not catching it sooner, or handle it himself and risk Carranza's anger for taking action without permission. Either way, the organization fractures a little more. Elena sat down across from him. In the dim light filtering through the canvas, she looked tired but unbroken. You're playing a dangerous game. The only kind worth playing. What if Vega just decides to kill you and take credit for everything himself? He won't, because I have one more card to play. Logan pulled out a small leather pouch from inside his shirt. The guard had missed it during the search. The location of the largest cache. The one Carranza thinks nobody knows about. You're lying. You don't know where it is. No, but I know how to find it, and I know that whoever brings that information to Carranza will be untouchable, protected, elevated. He tucked the pouch back inside his shirt. Vega can kill me now and have nothing. Or he can take me to Carranza and potentially gain everything. You're gambling that greed will win over caution. Greed always wins. It's the most reliable human weakness there is. They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher and the heat built inside the tent. Guards changed shifts outside. Horses whinnied in the corral. Normal sounds of a camp going about its daily business, unaware that everything was about to change. Logan, Elena said quietly, when this is over, if we survive, what will you do? Die, probably. This was never about survival. That's not what I meant. I meant, she struggled for words, there has to be something after. Something beyond revenge, otherwise what's the point? The point is justice for people who can't get it themselves. The point is making sure monsters like Carranza don't just keep winning. Logan looked at her. But you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't what I'll do after, it's what you'll do. I don't understand. You're young, you have family in California, a whole life waiting. When this is done, you walk away. You take whatever's left of that treasure and you build something good, something your father would be proud of. Elena's eyes filled with tears. And you? I'll make sure you can walk away. That's enough. Before she could respond, the tent flap opened and Vega stepped inside, alone. His expression was different now, harder, more calculating. I sent men to check your story, he said without preamble. They found evidence at Delgado's cave, enough to make me very interested in what else you might know. Satisfied? Cautiously convinced, which is why I'm going to make you an offer. Vega crouched down so he was eye level with Logan. Tomorrow, Carranza is holding a gathering. All his lieutenants, his key people, everyone who matters. It happens once every few months. A way to keep everyone aligned, address disputes, plan future operations. And you're going to tell him everything you told me, about Delgado, about Ramirez, about the caches. Vega's smile was sharp. You're going to stand in front of the most dangerous man in the territory and either prove you're valuable enough to keep alive, or die in a way that makes examples of all the others who thought they could play games with Carranza's empire. Logan felt his heart rate spike, but kept his expression calm. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. One chance to fracture the organization beyond repair or die trying. And if I refuse, then I kill you now and claim the credit myself. But I think you're too smart for that. I think you came here knowing this would happen, wanting it to happen. Vega stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting for both of us. He left. The guard outside resumed his position, and in the gathering darkness of the tent, Logan and Elena looked at each other with the knowledge that they'd reached the point of no return. Tomorrow, Elena whispered, you're really going to face Carranza. Yes. He'll see through you, see what you're doing. Maybe. Or maybe he'll see what every leader sees when their empire starts crumbling. Enemies everywhere, betrayal in every shadow, the slow death of everything they built. Logan closed his eyes, exhaustion finally catching up to him. Either way, tomorrow the war begins in earnest. And if we die? Then at least we die making them bleed first. Dawn came too fast and too slow at the same time. Logan had spent the night listening to the camp wake in stages. First the guards changing shifts, then the cook fires being lit, then the gradual stirring of men preparing for something important. He could hear it in their voices, the nervous energy that came before gatherings where power was displayed and fates were decided. Elena had barely slept. She sat with her back against the tent wall, watching the entrance, her hand never far from the small derringer hidden in the folds of her dress. In the pale morning light filtering through the canvas, Logan could see the exhaustion etched into her face, but also something harder. Resolve, maybe. Or the acceptance that came from knowing there was no path but forward. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. When we get to wherever this gathering is, you could slip away, find a horse, ride north, and never look back. We've had this conversation. I know, but now it's real. In a few hours, we're going to be standing in front of the most dangerous man in the territory, surrounded by his army, with nothing but words and a thin hope that our plan works. Logan met her eyes. I need you to understand, what happens next, there's no controlling it. It's going to be chaos. People are going to die, and we might be among them. Elena was quiet for a moment, then spoke with a voice steady as stone. My father used to say that some things are worth dying for. I never really understood that until they killed him, until I watched him take blow after blow, still trying to protect me with his last breath. She looked at Logan. You're doing this for your brother. I'm doing this for my father, for every person Carranza has destroyed. If we die with purpose. That's more than most people get. Before Logan could respond, the tent flap opened, and Vega stepped inside, flanked by 2 guards. He looked different this morning, more formal, wearing a black jacket with silver buttons that caught the light, his scarred face freshly shaved, his weapons polished to a gleam. This was Vega dressed for presentation, for showing the world who he was. Time to go, he said. Carranza doesn't like to be kept waiting. They were pulled to their feet and marched out into the morning. The camp was already breaking down, men loading wagons and saddling horses with practiced efficiency. This wasn't a permanent settlement. It was a staging ground, temporary by design, ready to be abandoned at the first sign of real trouble. Logan counted 40 men, maybe more, all armed, all watching as he and Elena were led to a wagon with iron bars welded across the back, a prisoner transport built for moving human cargo who might try to escape. Necessary precaution, Vega said, noting Logan's expression. Can't have you getting ideas during the ride. Carranza is particular about his guests arriving in the condition he expects. They climbed into the wagon. The bars clanged shut behind them, and a heavy lock clicked into place. Logan tested it once. Solid, well-made, not something that could be forced open without tools or considerable time. They were trapped until someone decided to let them out. The wagon lurched into motion, joining a convoy of riders and vehicles moving east across the desert. Vega rode alongside, never far from view, his hand resting casual on his pistol grip. Watching. Always watching. Where are we going? Elena asked. The stronghold, one of the guards answered before Vega could stop him. The place where Carranza holds court. Vega shot the guard a look that promised punishment later, but the damage was done. Logan filed away the information, adding it to the mental map he'd been building. The stronghold. Not a camp, not a temporary position. A permanent base. That meant fortifications, resources. Everything Carranza needed to maintain his empire. The journey took 3 hours across terrain that grew progressively more hostile. From desert scrubland to rocky hills to a narrow canyon that twisted like a snake's path through stone walls that rose 300 feet on either side. A natural fortress. The canyon could be held by a dozen men against an army. No wonder Carranza had chosen this place. The stronghold itself appeared as they rounded a final bend, a collection of buildings built into the canyon wall, some natural caves expanded and fortified, others constructed from adobe and stone. It was impressive in a brutal way, functional and defensible, the kind of place that had been designed by someone who understood warfare. The convoy came to a halt in a wide clearing where 20 more men waited, these ones different from the camp guards, more professional, better equipped. These were Carranza's personal guard, the inner circle that protected the heart of his operation. Vega dismounted and strode to the wagon, unlocking it himself. Out, slowly, hands where everyone can see them. Logan stepped down first, then helped Elena. The guards formed a loose circle around them, rifles ready, watching for any sudden movement. They were marched toward the largest building, a structure carved partially into the cliff face, with thick wooden doors reinforced with iron bands. Inside, the air was cooler, almost cold after the desert heat. Torches burned in wall sconces, casting dancing shadows across stone walls decorated with weapons, rifles, pistols, knives, swords, all hung in precise patterns like some kind of violent art gallery. And at the far end of the room, sitting behind a massive wooden desk covered in maps and ledgers, was a man who could only be Delgado. He looked up as they entered, his round face showing surprise quickly masked by calculation. Delgado was in his 50s, soft around the middle, with the hands of someone who'd spent more time counting money than pulling triggers. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, the eyes of a man who'd survived by being smarter than his enemies. Vega, he said, his voice carrying the cultured accent of someone educated far from this savage frontier. What's the meaning of this? Who are these people? Guests, Vega replied smoothly. Guests with interesting information about recent events. I thought Carranza should hear it directly. Delgado's gaze swept over Logan and Elena, assessing, cataloging. The ones who've been causing trouble. The ones who killed Ramirez and his team. Among others, Logan confirmed. And you brought them here. Alive? Delgado stood, his chair scraping against stone. Have you lost your mind? They should have been executed the moment they were caught, made examples of. Not paraded before. Before who? Vega interrupted, his voice cold. Before Carranza? Or before you, Delgado? Because I'm curious why you're so eager to silence them before they can speak. The room went deadly quiet. The guard shifted nervously, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Elena's hand moved fractionally closer to her hidden weapon, and Logan watched the two lieutenants face each other, the first crack in the organization's foundation becoming visible. I don't like your tone, Vega, Delgado said carefully, and I don't like finding burned caves and missing treasure and records that don't quite add up. Vega stepped forward. but I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, one you'll share with all of us when Carranza arrives. Carranza is already here. The voice came from a doorway Logan hadn't noticed before, hidden in shadow at the back of the room. A man stepped through and the temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Carranza was not what Logan expected. He'd built up an image in his mind, something monstrous, something obviously evil. But the man who stood before them now was unremarkable. Medium height, medium build, maybe 40 years old, with a face that wouldn't stand out in any crowd. Forgettable, except for the eyes. Those eyes held something ancient and patient and absolutely certain of its own power. "So," Carranza said, moving into the room with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in their own domain, "these are the troublemakers who've been disrupting my operations. I expected someone more impressive." Logan said nothing. This was the moment. Everything he'd planned, everything he'd sacrificed, all of it came down to the next few minutes. One wrong word, one false step, and it would end here. Carranza circled them slowly, studying. "Vega tells me you have information about betrayal within my organization, about stolen treasure, about men working against my interests." He stopped in front of Logan. "Is this true?" "Yes." "And you're willing to share this information? Just like that? For what purpose?" "To prove my value. To demonstrate that I'm more useful alive than dead. To offer my services to an organization that could benefit from someone with my skills." Logan kept his voice level, professional. "I'm a realist, Carranza. You've built something impressive here, something that's going to last. I'd rather be part of that than stand against it." Carranza smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "A survivor. I can respect that. But survival often comes at the cost of loyalty. How do I know you won't betray me the same way you claim others have?" "Because I'm not stupid. Betraying you would mean death. Serving you means profit, security, and the satisfaction of working for someone who actually knows how to run an empire." Logan gestured at the room, at the guards, at the obvious wealth and power on display. "This isn't a gang, it's a kingdom, and smart men align themselves with winning kingdoms." Flattery. How original. But Carranza was listening, his head tilted slightly, those calculating eyes never leaving Logan's face. "Tell me what you know. About Delgado. About my treasure. About this supposed betrayal." Logan glanced at Delgado, who'd gone very still, his soft hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he began speaking, laying out everything he'd planted, everything he'd fabricated, mixing just enough truth with lies to make it all sound believable. He told them about finding Ramirez acting suspicious, about following him to secret meetings with Delgado, about discovering the dual ledgers and the skimmed profits, about the burned cave and the missing gold. He presented the forged documents, the maps, the carefully constructed evidence that pointed to a conspiracy between the two lieutenants. As he spoke, he watched the room's dynamics shift, Vega listening with grim satisfaction, Delgado's face going from angry to pale to desperate. The guards exchanging uncertain looks, not sure who to believe or what to do. When Logan finished, the silence was absolute. Then Delgado laughed. It was a brittle, frightening sound. "This is insane. This is... Carranza, you can't possibly believe this. It's obviously a lie. This man, whoever he is, he's trying to divide us, turn us against each other." "Is he?" Carranza's voice was soft. "Then explain the burned cave. Explain why your personal cash was destroyed. Explain the discrepancies in the ledgers." "What discrepancies?" "I keep perfect records. Every peso accounted for. Every transaction documented." Delgado was sweating now, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "These documents he's showing you, they're forgeries, lies manufactured to make me look guilty." "Perhaps. Or perhaps they're evidence of exactly what he claims." Carranza turned to Vega. "You've examined them?" "Yes, and I've sent men to verify the locations. The cave is real. The burn marks are real. And the numbers..." Vega pulled out his own ledger, opening it to a marked page. "The numbers don't match what Delgado reported 3 months ago. Not perfectly. Small differences. The kind you wouldn't notice unless you were looking carefully. Small differences can be explained by rounding, by exchange rates, by a dozen legitimate factors. Delgado was talking faster now, fear creeping into his voice. You've known me for 5 years, Carranza. I've made you wealthy. I've built the systems that let this organization function. Why would I risk all of that for a few thousand in gold? Why would anyone? Carranza mused. And yet people do, constantly. Because greed is predictable. Because men always think they're clever enough to get away with it. He walked to his desk, running his fingers along the edge of the wood. But you raise a valid point. 5 years of loyal service shouldn't be dismissed because of one stranger's accusations. Logan felt the moment slipping. Delgado was regaining ground, using logic and history and reasonable doubt to deflect the accusations. He needed to push harder, needed to make this personal. Tell him about the boy, Logan said quietly. Carranza turned. What boy? The one you forced into a duel 6 months ago, 15 years old, never held a gun. You made him face one of your best shooters for entertainment. Logan's voice was still calm, but underneath something cold and terrible was rising. You made him stand there, terrified, begging for his life, and then you let your man shoot him, not to kill quick, to kill slow. The room went very still. Even Delgado stopped talking, sensing danger. There have been many such demonstrations, Carranza said carefully, part of maintaining discipline, part of showing what happens to those who cross me. You'll need to be more specific. His name was Mateo Logan, and he was my brother. The words hung in the air like smoke before a fire. Vega's hand moved to his pistol. The guards raised their rifles. Elena tensed, ready to move. And Carranza's expression shifted from curious to something darker. Ah, he said softly, now we arrive at the truth. This was never about joining my organization. This was about revenge. No, Logan said. This is about justice, and about making sure you understand what you took from me before I take everything from you. Bold words from a man surrounded by 40 armed soldiers. Carranza gestured, and the guards moved closer, forming a tighter circle. Did you really think you could walk into my stronghold and threaten me? That I would simply allow this? I think you already have, because while we've been talking, while you've been distracted by accusations and counter-accusations, your organization has been tearing itself apart from the inside. Logan looked at Vega. Tell him what you've been thinking, about how you could run this better, about how Carranza is getting soft, delegating too much, staying hidden while you do all the hard work. Vega's scarred face went rigid. I've never said, you didn't have to say it. I saw it in your eyes the moment I offered you information about Delgado. You saw opportunity. A chance to eliminate a rival and move up in the hierarchy. Logan turned to Delgado. And you've been skimming, haven't you? Maybe not as much as I claimed, but enough. Building your own safety net in case Carranza's empire collapses. Because you're smart enough to know that all empires eventually fall. Lies, Delgado hissed. All lies. Are they? Logan looked back at Carranza. Pican. Or are they the truth you've been too comfortable to see? Too successful to worry about. You've built an organization on fear and greed, and now you're surprised when fear and greed start eating it from the inside. Carranza's hand moved to his own weapon now, a beautifully engraved pistol worn high on his belt. You're trying to manipulate us. Turn us against each other. Classic strategy. Divide and conquer. I don't need to turn you against each other. You're already there. I just made you see it. Logan's voice was steady, despite the rifles pointed at his chest. Every empire built on violence eventually destroys itself. I'm just accelerating the process. Enough. Carranza drew his pistol, cocking it with a smooth motion. You came here to die, and I'm happy to oblige. You'll die knowing you failed, that your brother died for nothing, that this grand plan of yours accomplished nothing except getting yourself and your woman killed. Wait. Vega stepped forward, and something in his voice made Carranza pause. Before you kill them, there's something you should know, something I discovered this morning. What? The main cache, the one you keep hidden, the one only you're supposed to know about. Vega's eyes flickered to Logan, then back to Carranza. It's been moved. The color drained from Carranza's face. That's impossible. No one knows that location except... He stopped, understanding flooding his features. Except you. Yes. And Ramirez. You told him last month, remember? Said you needed someone else to know in case something happened to you. Vega's hand was on his pistol now, too. But Ramirez is dead, which means if the cash has been moved, you did it. And if you did it without telling me, that means you don't trust me anymore. That means you're preparing to cut me out. I haven't moved anything. Carranza's voice was sharp with anger and something else, fear. This is more of their manipulation. Can't you see it? Can I? Vega pulled his pistol now, not pointing it at anyone yet, but ready. Because I'm starting to wonder if maybe this stranger is telling the truth. If maybe you have been playing us against each other all along, keeping us divided so we never get strong enough to challenge you. Vega, don't be a fool. I'm not the fool, you are. You got comfortable, complacent, started believing your own myth. Vega's scarred face twisted into something ugly. But you're just a man, and men can be replaced. The gunshot was shockingly loud in the enclosed space, but it didn't come from Vega or Carranza. It came from Delgado, who'd pulled a small pistol from inside his jacket and fired at Vega, missing by inches as the scarred lieutenant dove sideways. Then chaos erupted. Vega returned fire, his bullet taking Delgado in the shoulder and spinning him around. The guards didn't know who to shoot. Their leaders were fighting each other, and no one had given clear orders. Some raised weapons toward Logan and Elena. Others pointed at Vega, others at Delgado. Logan had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it. He grabbed Elena and pulled her down as bullets started flying. The iron desk Carranza had been standing behind became a barrier, and Logan dragged Elena toward it, using the confusion to cross the room. Carranza had taken cover too, but on the opposite side. Their eyes met across the wooden surface, and in that instant they both understood. This was no longer about control. This was about survival. You did this, Carranza said, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. You walked into my stronghold and destroyed everything I built. No, Logan replied, pulling the pistol he'd taken from one of the dead guards during the confusion. You destroyed it years ago, when you decided that power was more important than loyalty, that fear was more important than respect, that my brother's life was worth less than your entertainment. He fired. The bullet caught Carranza in the side, not fatal but painful, and the leader of the gang fell back with a cry of rage and agony. More gunshots. Vega had taken cover behind a stone pillar, trading fire with 3 of Delgado's loyalists. Delgado himself was crawling toward a doorway, leaving a trail of blood, still trying to escape even wounded. The guards were fighting each other now, old grudges and new suspicions erupting into open warfare. Elena pulled her derringer and fired at a guard who was taking aim at Logan. The small gun's report was almost lost in the chaos, but the guard went down, and Logan used the moment to move again, circling toward where Carranza had fallen. But Carranza wasn't there anymore. Blood marked where he'd been, but the man himself had vanished into one of the shadowed doorways. Where did he go? Elena shouted over the noise. Logan scanned the room. 3 guards were down. Delgado had made it to a doorway and was pulling himself through. Vega was pinned behind the pillar, outgunned but not out of fight. And somewhere in the warren of rooms and tunnels that made up this stronghold, Carranza was running. Stay here, Logan ordered Elena. Find cover. Shoot anyone who isn't me. Where are you going? To finish this. He moved before she could argue, running low and fast toward the doorway where Carranza had disappeared. A bullet whined past his ear, fired by one of Vega's opponents, but Logan didn't slow down. He burst through the doorway into a narrow corridor carved from stone, torches burning at intervals, creating pools of light and shadow. Blood drops on the floor, fresh, leading deeper into the stronghold. Logan followed them, his pistol up and ready, every sense alert. The sounds of fighting grew fainter behind him as he descended into the earth, following a tunnel that branched and twisted like veins in stone. Carranza knew this place intimately. Every passage, every hiding spot, every trap. That made him dangerous, but it also made him predictable. The blood trail led to a larger chamber, natural cave that had been expanded and furnished, crates of supplies, weapons racks, maps on the walls showing territories and routes and locations. This was Carranza's inner sanctum, the place where he planned and schemed and built his empire. And in the center of the room, Leaning against a table with one hand pressed to his bleeding side was the man himself. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Carranza said. His voice was strained with pain but still controlled. "Now you're trapped down here with me. My men will regroup. They'll come for you. And when they do, you'll learn what it means to cross me. Your men are killing each other. The organization is finished. Everything you built is burning to ash because you were too arrogant to see that power without loyalty is just waiting to collapse." Logan kept his pistol trained on Carranza's chest. "It's over. It's never over. Men like me, we always come back. Even if you kill me, someone else will take my place. Vega, if he survives. Someone else, if he doesn't. The territory will always need someone to control it, to bring order to chaos." "Order?" Logan's laugh was bitter. "You call forcing a 15-year-old boy into a deathmatch order? You call terrorizing families and stealing everything they own order? That's not order. That's tyranny. And tyranny always falls." Carranza pushed away from the table, straightening despite the pain. "Your brother was weak. He was an example that needed to be made. You want to blame me for that? Fine. But understand, I gave him a chance. He could have fought, could have won. He chose to die like a coward." The rage that Logan had been keeping locked behind walls of discipline and planning finally broke free. He crossed the room in 3 strides and slammed Carranza against the wall, the pistol pressed under the man's chin. "Say that again," Logan whispered. "Say one more word about my brother and I'll paint these walls with your thoughts." Carranza smiled through the pain, and Logan realized too late that this was what he'd wanted, to break Logan's control, to make him act on emotion instead of strategy. The knife came from nowhere, sliding from Carranza's sleeve into his hand and stabbing toward Logan's ribs. Logan twisted, taking the blade in his shoulder instead of his heart, and brought his knee up hard into Carranza's wounded side. The gang leader gasped and dropped the knife, but he was still fighting, still dangerous, his hands going for Logan's throat. They crashed to the floor, grappling, both wounded, both driven by something beyond pain. Carranza fought with the desperate strength of someone who'd never lost before. Logan fought with the cold certainty of someone who had nothing left to lose. Logan's pistol had skittered away during the fall. Carranza's knife was somewhere under them, out of reach. It came down to fists and will, 2 men locked in mortal combat in a cave deep beneath the desert, fighting for something neither would articulate but both understood completely. Logan got his hand around Carranza's throat, squeezed. The gang leader's eyes bulged, his fingers clawing at Logan's face, his body bucking and thrashing. But Logan held on, kept squeezing, feeling the pulse beneath his palm grow erratic. "This is for Mateo," Logan said quietly. "This is for everyone you destroyed, everyone you tortured, everyone who died afraid and alone because you thought their lives were worth less than your entertainment." Carranza's struggles weakened. His hands fell away from Logan's face. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, finally showed something human, fear. The understanding that this was the end. That all his power, all his careful planning, all his ruthless control meant nothing now. Then a gunshot cracked through the chamber, and Logan felt something punch into his side. He fell away from Carranza, rolling, searching for the threat. Delgado stood in the doorway, his shoulder still bleeding but his pistol steady. "Get away from him," the soft man ordered, all pretense of civilization gone from his voice. "Get away or the next one goes through your skull." Logan raised his hand slowly, letting Delgado see he wasn't armed. His pistol was 10 feet away. The knife was lost somewhere in the struggle. He was wounded, exhausted, and outgunned. Delgado moved into the room, keeping his weapon trained on Logan while glancing at Carranza. "Are you all right?" Carranza coughed, his hand going to his bruised throat. "Do I look all right? He nearly killed me." "But he didn't, and now we finish this properly." Delgado's pistol shifted slightly, aiming more precisely at Logan's head. "You were right about one thing. The organization is compromised. Too many people know too much. Too many loyalties are in question." "What are you saying?" Carranza's voice was hoarse. "I'm saying that sometimes you have to burn things down to rebuild them stronger, and sometimes that means removing the old leadership to make room for new vision." Delgado's gun swung toward Carranza. "I'm sorry. Truly." But you've become a liability. The realization hit Carranza's face half a second before Delgado's bullet hit his chest. The gang leader stumbled backward, shock and betrayal written across his features, and fell hard against the table. He tried to speak, tried to raise his own weapon, but his strength was gone. He slid down the table leg to the floor and lay still. Delgado watched him die, then turned back to Logan. Thank you for exposing the weaknesses, for creating the chaos I needed. You've actually done me a tremendous favor. You're going to kill me anyway, Logan said, so save the speeches. Oh, I'm going to kill you, but not as an execution, as a duel. Delgado set his pistol down carefully on the table, then pulled out another one, an ornate dueling piece, pearl-handled and silver-chased. You wanted justice for your brother, yes? The boy who was forced into an unfair fight? Then let me give you a fair one. You and me. Both armed. Both given the same chance. Why? Because you've earned it. Because despite everything, I respect what you did here. You walked into Death's house and burned it down from the inside. That takes courage. It deserves a warrior's end, not an execution. Delgado walked to where Logan's pistol had fallen and kicked it toward him. Pick it up. On 3, we both draw. Winner survives. Loser joins Carranza in whatever hell waits for men like us. Logan stared at the pistol, then at Delgado. This was insane. This was exactly the kind of twisted honor that had gotten Mateo killed. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to end this in a way that meant something. He picked up the pistol, checked the cylinder. 3 rounds left. Enough. They stood facing each other across 10 feet of stone floor, Carranza's body cooling between them, the sound of distant fighting still echoing through the tunnels. One question, Logan said. Did you know? About my brother? Were you there when Carranza forced him to duel? Delgado was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I was there. I watched. I did nothing to stop it. Then you die knowing exactly why. Fair enough? Delgado's hand hovered over his pistol. On 3. 1. Logan's hand moved to his gun. The wound in his side was screaming, his shoulder was on fire from Carranza's knife, and he could feel blood running down his ribs from Delgado's bullet. But his hand was steady. His mind was clear. This was what everything had led to. 2. Somewhere above them, an explosion rocked the stronghold. The sound of more gunfire. Vega and his faction were still fighting, or maybe the whole place was coming apart. It didn't matter. All that mattered was this moment. 3. They drew. 2 shots, so close together they sounded like one. Delgado's bullet tugged at Logan's sleeve, missing flesh by a hair's breadth. Logan's bullet didn't miss. Delgado stood for a moment, looking down at the red stain spreading across his expensive shirt, then up at Logan with something like respect in his dying eyes. Good shot, he whispered, and fell. Logan stood alone in the chamber with 2 dead men and the wreckage of an empire. He should feel victorious, should feel the satisfaction of revenge completed, but all he felt was empty, hollow, like something had been carved out of him during this long hunt, and there was nothing left to fill the space. He reloaded his pistol mechanically and started back toward the surface, toward Elena, toward whatever was left of this broken place. The stronghold was chaos when he emerged. Bodies everywhere. Some of Vega's faction, some of Delgado's, some who'd probably just been caught in the crossfire. The fighting had moved outside now, men scattering into the canyon, abandoning the stronghold that had seemed so impregnable. He found Elena where he'd left her, using an overturned table as cover, her derringer empty but a rifle now in her hands, taken from one of the fallen. You're alive, she said when she saw him. Then, seeing the blood, you're hit. I'll live. Where's Vega? He ran, took about 10 men with him, said something about regrouping, starting over. Elena stood carefully, checking for threats. Is Carranza dead? Yes. And Delgado. It's over. They stood together in the ruined room, listening to the sounds of the gang tearing itself apart, scattering like rats from a burning ship. Everything Carranza had built, the fear, the power, the carefully maintained empire, was disintegrating in real time. We should go, Elena said, before someone decides to blame us for all of this. She was right. But Logan took a moment, looking around at the destruction, thinking about how he'd walked into this place expecting to die and had somehow survived, thinking about Mateo and whether this counted as justice or just revenge dressed in better clothes. "Logan," Elena said gently, "it's done. You can't bring him back, but you can still save yourself." He nodded slowly and followed her out into the canyon, away from the stronghold, away from the empire he'd destroyed, away from everything except the next breath and the next step and the uncertain future that waited beyond the stone walls. They made it a quarter mile before Logan's legs gave out. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation with Carranza, through the duel with Delgado, through the escape from the crumbling stronghold, finally burned away and left nothing but pain and exhaustion in its wake. Elena caught him before he hit the ground completely, easing him down against a boulder with surprising strength for someone who'd been through her own kind of hell. Her hands went immediately to his wounds, assessing, her face tight with worry. "How bad?" Logan managed through gritted teeth. "Bad enough. The bullet went through, but you're losing blood. The knife wound isn't deep, but it needs cleaning." She tore strips from her already ragged dress, creating makeshift bandages. "We need to get you to a doctor, or at least somewhere I can properly treat these." "No doctors, too many questions." Logan's vision was starting to blur at the edges, shock trying to pull him under. "The mission, San Rafael. The priest will help." "That's 2 days' ride. You won't make it." "Then find somewhere closer, a ranch, a town. Anywhere." He grabbed her wrist, his grip weak but insistent. "Don't let me die in this canyon. Not here, not where he built his kingdom." Elena looked back toward the stronghold, where smoke was rising now. Someone had set fires, either in rage or to cover their escape. The sounds of gunfire had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that somehow felt more ominous. Men were out there, scattered and dangerous, trying to figure out what came next now that their world had collapsed. "All right," she said, making a decision. "There was a farmhouse about 3 miles back. I saw it when they were bringing us in. Small, probably abandoned, but it might have supplies, water at least." She helped him to his feet, taking most of his weight, and they started moving. Every step was agony for Logan, his body finally acknowledging all the damage it had accumulated over the past weeks. The bullet wound burned like fire. The knife slash in his shoulder pulled with each movement. Bruises from the fight with Carranza throbbed in rhythm with his pulse. But he kept walking, because stopping meant dying and he wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Not until he knew for certain that what he'd done here mattered. The farmhouse was exactly where Elena remembered it. A sad little adobe structure slowly melting back into the desert, its door hanging open, its windows empty of glass. But there was a well in the yard, and when Elena dropped a stone down it, they heard the splash of water far below. She got Logan inside and settled him against a wall, then went back to draw water. The bucket she found was cracked but serviceable, and the water that came up was cool and clear. She brought it to Logan, helping him drink first, then using the rest to clean his wounds. He hissed in pain as she worked, but didn't pull away. This close, Elena could see how much the past months had cost him. His face was gaunt, his body lean almost to the point of starvation, his eyes hollowed out by grief and purpose. He'd burned himself up in pursuit of revenge, consumed everything he was in the fire of what he'd needed to become. "You should have told me," she said quietly, as she bound his wounds with clean strips torn from an old blanket she'd found. "About your brother, about what this was really about." "Would it have changed anything?" "No. But I would have understood better why you were so willing to die, why nothing else seemed to matter." She tied off the last bandage, perhaps tighter than necessary. "He must have meant everything to you." Logan was quiet for a long time, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow but steady. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he usually kept buried. "After our parents died, it was just the two of us. I raised him. Taught him to ride, to rope, to read. Told him stories at night when he was scared. Promised him that as long as I was alive, nothing would hurt him." His laugh was bitter. "Some promise that turned out to be. You couldn't have known, couldn't have stopped what happened. I should have been there. Should have seen it coming. Should have—" He trailed off, then opened his eyes to look at her. "He was good, Elena. Truly good. kind in a way that this territory tries to beat out of people. He used to feed stray dogs even when we barely had enough for ourselves. Used to help neighbors without asking for payment. The kind of person the world needs more of, not less. And Carranza killed him for sport. Yes, because men like Carranza see goodness as weakness, see kindness as something to exploit, and they keep winning because good people are too decent to fight back the way monsters fight. Logan's hand clenched into a fist. So I became something else, something that could meet them on their own ground and beat them at their own game. Elena sat back, studying his face in the dim light filtering through the broken windows. Did it work? Do you feel better now that they're dead? No. I feel empty. Like I carved out everything human in me to make room for what I needed to be, and now there's nothing left to fill the space. He met her eyes. But that's fine. I never expected to survive this, never wanted to. I just needed to make sure that before I died, the people who killed Mateo understood what they'd taken from the world. They're dead, Logan. Carranza, Delgado. Most of their men scattered or fighting each other. The organization is finished. You won. She touched his face gently, forcing him to look at her. You don't have to die now. You can choose to live, to rebuild, to be something other than a weapon pointed at people who are already gone. Before he could respond, they heard voices outside. Men's voices getting closer. Elena's hand went to the rifle she'd kept close, and Logan tried to stand, reaching for his pistol despite the pain. Stay down, Elena whispered. I'll handle this. She moved to the window, peering out carefully. 3 men on horseback, moving slow, searching. Not Vega's men. These ones looked like locals, ranchers maybe, or townspeople drawn by the sounds of battle and hoping to scavenge something from the wreckage. One of them spotted the fresh tracks leading to the farmhouse. He pointed, said something to his companions, and they all turned their horses toward the building. Elena cocked the rifle, the sound loud in the silence. The riders heard it and stopped, their hands moving to their own weapons but not drawing yet. The lead rider, an older man with gray in his beard and the weathered face of someone who'd spent a lifetime in the sun, called out, We don't mean trouble, just looking for survivors, for anyone who needs help. We don't need help, Elena called back. Move on. You're bleeding. I can see the blood trail from here, and I'm guessing whoever's in there with you is hurt bad, given how much you're leaving behind. The old man held up his hands, showing he wasn't armed. My name's Tom Garrett. I run a ranch about 10 miles north. We heard the fighting, saw the smoke. Figured we'd ride down and see if anyone needed assistance. Why would you help anyone from Carranza's gang? We wouldn't, but from the sound of that accent, you're not from around here. And from the tracks, you're running from that stronghold, not toward it. That makes you either prisoners who escaped or enemies who survived. Either way, you're probably not friends of Carranza. Elena looked back at Logan, who nodded slightly. They didn't have many options. He was in no condition to run, and if these men wanted them dead, they could just set fire to the farmhouse and wait. I'm coming out, Elena said. My companion is wounded. If you make one wrong move, I'll put a bullet through the first person I see. Fair enough. She stepped through the doorway, rifle up and ready, scanning the 3 men for signs of deception. But all she saw was honest concern on the old man's face, curiosity on the younger one's. Not threat, not yet. How bad is he hurt? Tom asked, dismounting slowly. Bad enough. Bullet through the side, knife wound, loss of blood. Elena didn't lower the rifle. You said you'd help. What kind of help? The kind that involves getting him to my ranch, where my wife can clean those wounds properly, and we can get some food in both of you. The kind that doesn't involve asking too many questions about where you came from or what happened back there. Tom gestured toward the stronghold. We've lived under Carranza's shadow for 3 years. If someone finally brought him down, we're not about to repay that by turning them over to whatever's left of his gang. Carranza's dead, so is Delgado. The organization is finished. The 3 men exchanged looks, something like hope flickering across their faces. You're sure? One of the younger men asked. I watched them die. Both of them. Elena finally lowered the rifle slightly. But Vega's still alive. And there are probably others who'll try to take over. This isn't finished. Not completely. But it's broken. That's more than anyone's managed in 3 years. Tom took a careful step forward. Let us help. Please. Consider it payment for whatever part you played in giving us our lives back. Elena looked at these men. Honest ranchers who'd survived by keeping their heads down and their mouths shut, who'd probably lost friends and family to Carranza's violence, who wanted nothing more than to return to normal lives. They reminded her of her father, of the good people the world was supposed to protect instead of destroy. All right, she said, but carefully. He's hurt worse than he wants to admit. They brought Logan out between them, the old man surprisingly strong despite his age. They had a wagon hidden in a draw nearby. They'd brought it hoping to recover bodies of friends, of family, of anyone who'd been taken by the gang over the years. Instead, they loaded 2 survivors who'd walked into hell and somehow walked back out. The ride to Tom Garrett's ranch took 2 hours, with Elena riding beside the wagon and the 2 younger men scouting ahead for trouble. Logan drifted in and out of consciousness, fever starting to set in from his wounds, his body finally surrendering to the damage it had endured. Tom's wife, Mary, was waiting when they arrived. A small, fierce woman who took one look at Logan and immediately started issuing orders. Water boiled, clean linens brought, instruments sterilized. She worked with the efficiency of someone who'd tended many wounds over many years, asking no questions, offering no judgments. Elena helped where she could, holding Logan down when Mary had to dig out fragments of fabric from his bullet wound, offering water when he was conscious enough to drink. Through it all, Logan endured with the same quiet stoicism he'd shown through everything else, refusing to scream even when the pain must have been unbearable. When it was finally done, Mary stepped back and wiped her hands on a bloody apron. He'll live. Probably. Assuming infection doesn't set in. Assuming he actually rests instead of trying to get up and finish whatever war he's fighting. She looked at Elena. You'll need to keep him still. Force him to eat. Watch for fever. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Because I've seen men die from wounds less serious than his simply because they were too stubborn to admit they needed time to heal. Mary pulled off the apron and tossed it aside. Now, while he's sleeping, you're going to eat something, take a bath, and put on clean clothes. Then you're going to tell me what really happened out there. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to stay by Logan's side, but Mary's expression made it clear this wasn't a request. She allowed herself to be led to another room where hot water and soap and the simple luxury of being clean again waited. An hour later, wearing borrowed clothes and feeling almost human again, Elena sat at the Garrett's kitchen table and told them everything. Not the whole story. Some parts were too painful, too personal, but enough. About her capture, about Logan's rescue, about the plan to tear Carranza's organization apart from inside, about the final confrontation in the stronghold. Tom and Mary listened in silence, their faces showing shock, then understanding, then something like awe. One man, Tom said finally, one man walked into Carranza's empire and destroyed it. 2, Elena corrected. I was there too. Yes, but you're honest enough to know it was his plan, his sacrifice, his willingness to become something terrible in order to stop something worse. Tom shook his head. I've seen a lot of brave men in my life, but I've never seen anything like that. He did it for his brother, the boy Carranza killed. I remember hearing about that, Mary said softly. It was months ago. They made sure word spread, made sure everyone knew what happened to people who displeased them. She was quiet for a moment. The boy's name was Mateo, wasn't it? He worked sometimes at the livery in Las Cruces. Sweet kid, always had a smile. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Logan raised him. It was just the 2 of them, and Carranza took that away for entertainment. Then Carranza got what he deserved, and maybe the territory can finally start healing. Tom stood, walking to the window to look out at his land. We've been living in fear for so long, afraid to speak up, afraid to fight back, afraid that standing for something would mean losing everything. Your man, he reminded us that some things are worth fighting for, even if it costs you your life. He's not my man, isn't he? You rode into death beside him, stayed when you could have run, fought when you could have hidden. Mary's smile was knowing. That sounds like partnership to me, maybe something more. Elena didn't know how to respond to that. What she and Logan had was forged in violence and grief, bound together by shared trauma and common purpose. She didn't know if that counted as love or just survival instinct, didn't know if it mattered. That night, she sat by Logan's bedside while he slept, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a miser counted gold. His fever had climbed as evening came, and Mary had warned that the next 48 hours would be critical. If he could fight through the infection, he'd recover. If not, Elena refused to think about that possibility. She'd lost too much already. Her father, her innocence, her belief that the world was fundamentally just. She couldn't lose this stubborn, broken man who'd walked into hell for a brother who couldn't be saved. Around midnight, Logan's eyes opened. They were glassy with fever, unfocused, but he saw her. "Elena," he whispered, "did we win?" "Yes. Carranza's dead. It's over." "Good. That's good." His hand reached for hers, his grip weak but warm. "My brother. Mateo. I need to tell him." "He knows," Elena said gently, understanding that fever had blurred the line between past and present in Logan's mind. "He knows you avenged him. That you made them pay for what they did. He'd be proud of you." "Proud?" Logan's laugh turned into a cough. "I became a monster, killed men, manipulated, lied, destroyed lives. You became what you needed to be, and now you can become something else, something better." She squeezed his hand. "But first you have to live. You have to fight this fever and heal and give yourself permission to have a future." "Don't know how to do that. Don't know how to be anything except what I became." "Then I'll teach you, the way you taught your brother, one day at a time." Elena leaned forward, her voice fierce with determination. "You don't get to die now, Logan. Not after everything we survived. You're going to live. You're going to heal. And you're going to figure out what comes next for a man who spent everything on revenge and found himself still standing when it was over." Logan's eyes closed again, but this time Elena thought she saw the ghost of a smile on his lips. For 3 days, he fought the fever. There were times when Elena thought they'd lose him, when his temperature spiked so high he became delirious, calling out names of people long dead, reliving battles from a war years ended. But Mary's herbs and Elena's stubbornness kept him tethered to life, pulling him back each time he tried to slip away. On the 4th day, the fever broke. Logan woke clear-eyed and weak as a newborn, but alive. Properly alive, not just surviving. "You look terrible," Elena said when she saw him awake. "You should see the other guy," he replied, and she laughed despite herself. Mary brought broth and bread, feeding him small amounts while warning him not to try getting up yet. Logan endured her fussing with better grace than Elena expected, perhaps too weak to argue, perhaps simply accepting that some battles couldn't be won with stubbornness alone. That evening, Tom came to visit, bringing news from the territory. Vega's disappeared, him and about a dozen men. Word is they headed south, across the border, decided to start fresh somewhere Carranza's reputation doesn't follow them. Tom sat down on a chair by the bed. The rest of the gang scattered. Some probably went back to honest work. Some probably joined up with other outfits. But the organization as it was, that's finished. Dead as Carranza himself. "What about the territory?" Logan asked. "Who's filling the vacuum?" "Nobody. Not yet. The law's trying to move in, establish some real authority. We've got a new sheriff in Las Cruces, brought in from Arizona. Seems honest enough. Time will tell." Tom pulled out a pouch and set it on the bedside table. "Found this in the stronghold. Well, my boys did. They went back after things settled, looking for anything worth salvaging. Found quite a bit of gold and silver in Carranza's personal chambers. Most of it's being distributed to families who lost people or property to the gang. But this was separate. Hidden in a way that suggested it was personal, not stolen. Earned, maybe, or saved." Logan looked at the pouch, but didn't reach for it. "Why bring it to me?" "Because Mary says you're going to need stake money when you recover. Money to start over somewhere. Build something new." Tom's expression was serious. "You can't stay here, son. Too many people saw what happened. Too many survivors who might blame you for the chaos, even if you did rid us of a monster. You need to disappear. Start fresh where nobody knows your face or your story. He's right, Elena said quietly. We both need to disappear. Logan looked at her. We? You think I'm going to let you wander off alone? After everything? She shook her head. My father always said that the people who stand beside you in the dark are the ones worth keeping close. You stood beside me. Now I'm standing beside you. That's not a debt. That's a choice. Logan was quiet for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he nodded slowly. California. You said you had family there. A cousin in San Francisco. She's been asking me to visit for years, said there's work there, opportunities, a chance to build something. Elena smiled. We could go, together, start over where the past doesn't follow us. I don't know how to do that. Don't know how to be a normal person anymore. Then we'll figure it out together, the same way we figured out everything else. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You spent months becoming a weapon. Now spend some time becoming a person again. It's harder, but I think you're strong enough for it. 2 weeks later, when Logan could ride again and the worst of his wounds had healed to scars, they prepared to leave. The Garretts had insisted they stay longer, but both Logan and Elena felt the pull of motion, the need to put distance between themselves and the ghosts that haunted this territory. Tom provided horses, good ones, strong enough for the long journey west. Mary packed supplies and medicine, enough to see them through to California with some to spare. And on their last night at the ranch, they shared a meal with the couple who'd saved their lives. What will you tell people, Logan asked Tom, when they ask what happened to Carranza? The truth, that he destroyed himself through greed and cruelty, that his own men turned on him, that empires built on fear always collapse eventually. Tom raised his glass. And if someone asks if there was a stranger involved, a quiet man with dangerous eyes, I'll tell them I don't know what they're talking about. That sounds tend to carry strange rumors during violent times. Thank you for everything. Don't thank us. You gave us our lives back. Giving you a place to heal is the least we could do. Tom's expression grew serious. But I'll give you one piece of advice. When you get to California, when you start your new life, let this go. All of it, the anger, the grief, the memory of what you had to become. Those things will poison whatever you try to build if you carry them with you. I don't know if I can. You can, because the alternative is spending the rest of your life as a weapon without a target. A man defined by revenge in a world where the people you wanted revenge against are already dead. Tom leaned forward. Your brother wouldn't want that for you. He'd want you to live, truly live, not just survive. Logan looked down at his hands, scarred and calloused, hands that had killed and destroyed and torn apart an empire. Could these same hands build something good? Create something worth protecting? I'll try, he said finally. That's all I can promise. But I'll try. The next morning, they rode out as the sun broke over the eastern mountains. Elena sat her horse like she'd been born to it, her face turned toward the west and whatever waited there. Logan rode beside her, feeling the weight of the past few months like stones in his saddlebags, but also feeling something new, something he hadn't felt since before Mateo died. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. They stopped once, on a ridge overlooking the territory they were leaving behind. From here, Logan could see the smoke still rising from Carranza's stronghold, could trace the canyon where so much blood had been spilled, could almost hear the echoes of gunfire and screams and the last words of dying men. Do you want to go back? Elena asked. Leave some kind of marker, something to remember him by? Logan shook his head. No, Mateo isn't in that ground. He's not in any ground. He's in here. He touched his chest over his heart. And the best way to honor him is to live the kind of life he would have wanted me to live. One where kindness matters more than strength, where building matters more than destroying. That's going to be hard for you. Yes, but hard doesn't mean impossible. He turned his horse west, toward the distant mountains and the ocean beyond them. Let's go. We've got a long ride ahead, and I'd like to put some miles behind us before dark. They rode through the morning and into the afternoon, the territory of blood and revenge gradually falling away behind them. Neither of them looked back. There was nothing there worth seeing anymore. only ghosts and memories and the empty satisfaction of vengeance that had cost more than it returned. But ahead there was possibility, a new city, a new life, a chance to become something other than what trauma had forced them to be. As the sun climbed toward its peak, Elena started singing softly, an old song her father used to hum while working, something about home and hope and the persistence of dawn after even the darkest night. Logan didn't know the words, but he found himself humming along, the melody settling into his bones like warmth after cold. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ross Logan allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by the past. A future where he was more than the sum of his scars, more than the ghost of a boy's older brother, more than a weapon pointed at people who deserved killing. He imagined it and found that it didn't seem impossible, just hard. And hard was something he'd learned to handle. They were 3 days west of the Garrett Ranch when the pass caught up to them. Logan had felt it coming, that prickle between the shoulder blades that every soldier learned to recognize, the sense of being watched that had nothing to do with paranoia and everything to do with survival instinct honed sharp by war and violence. He'd said nothing to Elena, not wanting to worry her, but he'd been riding with one hand never far from his pistol and his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. The attack came at dusk, when the light played tricks and shadows stretched long across the desert floor. They'd made camp in a shallow arroyo that offered some protection from wind and sight lines, and Logan was building a small fire when he heard the distinctive sound of a rifle being cocked. "Don't move!" The voice came from the rim of the arroyo, silhouetted against the dying sun. Logan couldn't see the face, but he recognized the tone. Cold, professional, certain. This wasn't some desperate outlaw looking for easy prey. This was someone who knew exactly who they were hunting. Elena's hand moved toward the rifle beside her bedroll, but Logan shook his head fractionally. Not yet. Not until they understood what they were facing. "Smart," the voice said. "Hands where I can see them, both of you. And before you think about trying something heroic, know that I've got 3 men positioned around your camp. You won't make it 2 steps before we cut you down." Logan raised his hands slowly, his mind already working through possibilities. The voice was familiar somehow, though he couldn't place it. Not one of Carranza's men. They were dead or scattered. Not Vega. The tone was wrong. Too measured. Too calm. "What do you want?" Logan asked. "What I want is to understand why a dead man is riding west toward California." The figure started down the slope, rifle held steady, and as he came into the firelight, Logan finally recognized him. Ramirez. But not the Ramirez who'd died in the canyon camp. This one was older, harder, with lieutenant's bars still visible on his dusty uniform jacket. Army. Or former Army, given the deserter's discharge papers that rumor said he carried. "You're supposed to be dead," Logan said. "Funny, I was thinking the same about you." The man who wasn't Ramirez but looked enough like him to be family circled the camp, keeping his distance. "My brother told me about you before he died. Said a ghost came to the canyon camp, killed 4 men like it was nothing, took the woman and disappeared. Your brother made poor choices. They cost him his life. My brother was loyal to Carranza, did his job. Didn't deserve to die in the dirt because some stranger decided to play hero." The rifle's barrel never wavered. "But I'm not here about that. Not entirely. I'm here because I need to know something. And depending on your answer, you either ride out of here in the morning or you don't ride anywhere ever again. Ask your question. Did you kill Carranza?" Logan held the man's gaze, reading the intensity there, the need for truth rather than comfort. "Yes. I killed Carranza. And Delgado. And I destroyed their organization from the inside until it collapsed under its own corruption." The man, Logan decided to keep calling him Ramirez, even though he now knew this wasn't the same person, absorbed this information without visible reaction. Why? Because 6 months ago, Carranza forced my 15-year-old brother into a duel for entertainment, made him stand across from a professional gunman, made him try to draw when he'd never held a weapon, then had him shot down like a dog while everyone watched and laughed. Logan's voice was quiet but edged with steel, because monsters like Carranza don't stop until someone makes them stop, and because I was the only one willing to become what was necessary to end him. Ramirez was quiet for a long moment, the rifle still pointed at Logan's chest, but something changing in his eyes. My brother wrote me letters. Not often, but enough. In his last one, he said he was starting to question things. Said Carranza had crossed lines even he couldn't stomach. Said he was thinking about leaving. He didn't leave. He stayed loyal until the end. Yeah, that was always his problem. Loyal to a fault. Ramirez lowered the rifle slightly. The people around here, the ones who survived Carranza's reign, they're telling stories. About a stranger who walked into hell and burned it down. About how the organization tore itself apart over betrayal and greed. About how a man with nothing left to lose gave this territory back its future. Stories get exaggerated. Do they? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you did exactly what the stories say. Ramirez looked at Elena. Ramirez looked at Boba. And you? You're the woman my brother was supposed to be guarding, the one they took from her father. Yes, Elena said, her voice steady despite the rifle still partially pointed their direction. My condolences for your father. Ramirez seemed to mean it. My brother wasn't a good man, but he wasn't the worst either. He would have kept you alive, treated you better than Vega would have. That's a low bar. It is, but it's the one we had. Ramirez finally lowered the rifle completely, letting it hang loose in his hands. The other men I mentioned, the ones supposedly positioned around your camp, they don't exist. I'm alone. Just me and a need to understand what happened to my brother and the organization he died for. Logan relaxed fractionally, but didn't drop his guard entirely. Now you know. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Because despite everything, I think you did this territory a favor. Carranza was a cancer. He needed cutting out. The fact that it cost good men like my brother their lives. Ramirez shook his head. That's the price of serving monsters. You learn that eventually, or you die without learning it. My brother died without learning it. He walked to the fire and sat down across from Logan, setting his rifle aside but keeping it within reach. The gesture was clear. Not trust exactly, but a temporary truce, a willingness to talk before deciding what came next. I served with Carranza in the war, Ramirez said. Mexico's war, not yours. He was brilliant then, tactical, disciplined. We all thought he'd become a general, maybe more. But when the war ended, and there were no more battles to fight, no more enemies to destroy, something in him broke. Or maybe it was always broken, and the war just gave him an acceptable outlet. What happened? He couldn't let go, couldn't accept that the fighting was over, so he created his own war, his own kingdom, started with a few men, grew it into an empire built on fear and stolen wealth. Ramirez stared into the fire. Some of us followed him because we didn't know what else to do, some because we believed in him, and some because we were too scared to say no. Which were you? All three at different times, but I got out before it consumed me completely, took my discharge, my scars, and whatever conscience I had left and tried to build something clean. It didn't take. He gestured at himself, the worn clothes, the desperate edge, the look of a man who'd tried to outrun his past and failed. Turns out, you can't wash blood off your hands just by walking away. It stains, permanently. Logan understood that better than he wanted to admit. Your brother sent for you before he died, asked you to join up with Carranza. How did you know that? I didn't, but I recognized the look. The guilt of saying no to family, the wondering if things would have been different if you'd said yes. Logan touched his own chest, over his heart. I know what it feels like to be too far away when someone you love needs you, to arrive too late to make a difference. Ramirez nodded slowly. I told him no. Told him to get out while he could. Told him that Carranza's empire was built on sand and would collapse the moment someone pushed hard enough. He laughed bitterly. Guess I was right about that last part. Your brother died quick, relatively painless. That's more than most of Carranza's victims got. Is that supposed to comfort me? No. It's supposed to be the truth. Logan leaned forward. I killed him because he was in my way, because he chose loyalty to a monster over his own survival. But I didn't make him suffer, didn't make it personal. He was a soldier doing his job. I respected that even as I ended him. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them, the desert night growing cold as it always did once the sun disappeared. Elena had been quiet through all of this, watching, listening, her hand never far from her weapon, but her posture showing she'd accepted that this confrontation wasn't going to end in violence. Not immediately, anyway. Finally, Ramirez spoke again. "Where are you headed?" "California, San Francisco. Going to start over where nobody knows our faces." "Good plan. This territory has a long memory. Too many people lost too much to Carranza. Some of them might decide to blame the man who brought down the whole structure, even if that structure was rotten." Ramirez stood, picking up his rifle. "I'm going to let you go. Not because I forgive you for my brother. I don't know if I can forgive that. But because this territory doesn't need more blood. It needs healing. And that starts with people like me choosing to walk away instead of demanding more revenge." "What will you do?" Elena asked. "Ride south, cross the border, find some place where the war hasn't followed me yet, and try to build something that doesn't involve killing." He looked at Logan. "Maybe I'll fail. Probably will. But at least I'll have tried. That's more than my brother can say." He started to leave, then paused at the edge of the firelight. "The stories they're telling about you, about the ghost who destroyed Carranza's empire, they're going to spread, get bigger, more elaborate. Eventually, someone's going to come looking to prove they're tougher than the legend. When that happens, you're going to have to decide if you're still the man who killed without hesitation or if you've become someone else." "I've already decided," Logan said quietly. "I'm done killing, done with revenge, done with being a weapon. We'll see. The world has a way of testing those kinds of promises." Ramirez touched his hat in a half salute. "Safe travels. And for what it's worth, thank you for giving this territory a chance to be something other than Carranza's personal hell." He disappeared into the darkness, his footsteps fading until even the sound of his horse moving away was gone. Logan and Elena sat by the fire, neither speaking, both processing what had just happened. "He could have killed us," Elena said finally. "Yes, but he didn't, because you were honest with him. Because you didn't try to justify what you'd done or pretend it was anything other than what it was. Lies would have insulted us both. He deserved the truth." Logan poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. His brother was a good soldier, professional, disciplined. If he'd lived in different times, served different leaders, he might have been someone worth knowing. But he didn't. He served a monster, and that choice cost him everything. Yes. Just like serving monsters always does. Logan looked at Elena across the flames. "That's why we have to be careful when we get to California, when we start building whatever comes next. We have to make sure we're building something worth protecting, not just surviving, but actually living." Elena smiled, and in the firelight she looked younger, less haunted. "You're starting to sound hopeful. I like it. Don't get used to it. I'm still figuring out how to do this whole having a future thing." They continued west the next morning, putting miles between themselves and the encounter with Ramirez, between themselves and the territory where so much blood had been spilled. The landscape gradually changed as they traveled, from desert to grassland, from flat plains to rolling hills, from the brutal heat of the borderlands to the cooler air of higher elevations. They passed through small towns where news of Carranza's fall had already spread, where people whispered about strangers riding through and wondered if these might be the legendary figures from the stories. But Logan and Elena kept moving, never staying long enough for questions to form, never giving anyone enough time to connect the quiet man and the resilient woman to the tales being told in saloons and around campfires. 2 weeks into their journey, they stopped at a town called Silver Creek to resupply. It was bigger than most settlements they'd passed, a real town with a bank, a newspaper, multiple saloons, and the kind of population that suggested permanence rather than the transient mining camps that dotted the territory. While Elena was purchasing supplies at the general store, Logan noticed a crowd gathered outside the sheriff's office. Curious despite himself, he walked over to see what had drawn their attention. A wanted poster, fresh ink, and on it, a rough sketch of a face Logan recognized because he shaved it every morning. Wanted for questioning. Man known as Ross Logan, or similar name. Approximately 30 years of age, medium build, dangerous. Wanted in connection with the destruction of property and deaths in the Southern Territories. Approach with caution. Contact Sheriff Williams, Las Cruces. The reward wasn't huge, $500, but it was enough to make some people interested. And the wanted for questioning, rather than wanted dead or alive, suggested that whoever had posted it wanted answers more than they wanted revenge. Logan pulled the poster down carefully, folding it and tucking it inside his jacket. Then he walked calmly back to where Elena was loading supplies onto their pack horse. "We need to leave," he said quietly. "Now." She heard something in his voice that made her stop asking questions. They mounted up and rode out of Silver Creek at a steady pace, not running, which would draw attention, but not dawdling either. Once they were clear of the town, Logan showed her the poster. Elena read it twice, then looked at him. $500. That's almost insulting considering what you did. It's not about the money. It's about someone looking for closure, for answers, for a way to make sense of what happened. Logan tucked the poster away. "We need to move faster, get across state lines. California doesn't have jurisdiction agreements with the territories. Once we're there, we should be safe." They pushed hard for the next week, traveling longer days, sleeping less, always watching for signs of pursuit. But no one came. Either the poster hadn't been distributed widely yet, or people in these parts had their own problems to worry about without chasing strangers over territorial boundaries. The mountains came into view on their 10th day out from Silver Creek, the Sierra Nevada, snow-capped even in late spring, beautiful and imposing and marking the final barrier between them and their destination. They climbed through passes where the air grew thin and cold, where their horses labored and their breath came in visible clouds. And then, cresting a final ridge, they saw it spread out before them, the California Valley, green and vast and full of promise. "There," Elena said, pointing. "That's our future. Everything we've survived, everything we've endured, it led to this." Logan looked at the valley and tried to feel what she felt. Hope, excitement, the anticipation of new beginnings. But all he felt was tired. Bone-deep tired that had nothing to do with the long journey and everything to do with the weight he'd been carrying since Mateo died. "What if I can't do it?" he asked quietly. "What if I can't be the person this new life needs me to be?" Elena reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Then we'll figure it out together, just like everything else. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of choosing to build instead of destroy." They descended into the valley as the sun set, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. They found a small town called Auburn nestled in the foothills and took a room at a boarding house run by a widow who asked no questions beyond whether they could pay. That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Logan finally allowed himself to believe that maybe this could work. Maybe he could become someone other than what trauma had forced him to be. Maybe the future didn't have to be defined by the past. In the morning, they bought train tickets to San Francisco with the last of the gold Tom Garrett had given them. The train was a marvel, something Logan had heard about but never experienced. All steam and steel and speed that ate up miles faster than any horse could manage. Elena sat by the window, watching the landscape blur past, her face showing wonder and excitement. Logan sat beside her, quieter, still adjusting to the idea that this journey was almost over. That soon they'd be in a city where nobody knew them, where they could be anyone they chose to be. "What will you do?" Elena asked. "In San Francisco, what kind of work?" "Don't know yet. Something honest. Something that builds instead of destroys." Logan watched the countryside roll past. "Maybe I'll work at a stable. I'm good with horses. Or construction. I can swing a hammer as well as anyone." "You could do more than that. You're smart, strategic. The way you took apart Carranza's organization, that took planning, vision. Those skills could be used for legitimate business." "Maybe. But I think I need to start small. Relearn how to be a normal person before I try to be anything more ambitious." He looked at her. "What about you? Your cousin? What does she do?" "She owns a restaurant, small place, but successful. She's been asking me for years to come help her run it. Said she needs someone she can trust." Elena smiled. "I used to love cooking with my father. Before, everything. Maybe I can find that again. That joy in creating something people need." The train rattled on through the afternoon and into the evening. Other passengers came and went, none paying much attention to the quiet man and the determined woman in the back car. They were just two more people heading west, chasing the dream of something better. San Francisco appeared as they crested a final hill, a city built on hills of its own, all steep streets and tall buildings, and the massive bay spreading out beyond it like a promise. Bigger than anything Logan had ever seen, loud, chaotic, perfect for disappearing into. Elena's cousin, Maria, met them at the train station. A round, cheerful woman who swept Elena into a hug that lifted her off her feet and then turned to Logan with eyes that missed nothing. "So you're the one who kept my cousin alive," Maria said, her accent thick with the musical Spanish of Mexico City. "She wrote me, told me everything. Or enough, anyway." "I didn't keep her alive. She did that herself." Modest. I like that. Maria linked arms with both of them. "Come. You'll stay with me until you find your own place. And tomorrow, we talk about the future. About building lives that matter. About leaving the past where it belongs. Behind us." They followed her through streets that smelled of salt water and fish and humanity packed too close together, where languages Logan didn't recognize mixed with English and Spanish in a constant babble of sound. It was overwhelming and strange, and absolutely nothing like the quiet desert where he'd spent the last months hunting and killing. It was perfect. Maria's apartment was small but clean, perched on the third floor of a building that swayed slightly in the wind coming off the bay. She fed them until they couldn't eat another bite, plied them with wine that loosened tongues, and asked questions that were pointed but not prying. Finally, late in the evening, after Elena had gone to bed in the small room Maria had prepared, the restaurant owner fixed Logan with a look that reminded him uncomfortably of Mary Garrett. "My cousin loves you," Maria said bluntly. "Maybe she doesn't know it yet. Maybe you don't either, but I see it. The way she looks at you, the way she trusts you. I don't deserve that trust. Probably not, but love and deserve don't always align." Maria poured more wine into Logan's glass. "You've done terrible things. She told me some of it. I can imagine the rest. But you did those things for reasons that made sense to you, for a brother who was murdered, for justice in a place where justice had died. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it human. And human is what you need to remember how to be." She leaned forward. "This city, it's full of people running from pasts they can't change. Miners who killed for gold, soldiers who committed atrocities in war, men and women who survived by becoming monsters and now want to remember how to be people. You're not unique here. You're just one more story in a city built on stories. That's supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be freeing. Nobody here cares who you were. They only care who you are now, who you choose to be tomorrow." Maria stood, gathering the plates. "My cousin chose to bring you here. Chose to bind her future to yours. Don't waste that gift by dwelling on a past you can't change. Honor it by becoming someone worthy of it." She left Logan alone with his wine and his thoughts, and the sound of the city outside the window, alive and raucous and utterly indifferent to his presence. The next morning, Logan walked down to the docks and found work loading ships. It was hard labor, mindless and exhausting, exactly what he needed. The foreman asked no questions beyond whether Logan was strong enough for the job. Logan demonstrated by lifting a crate that took two other men to move. He was hired on the spot. Elena started working at Maria's restaurant, learning the rhythms of the kitchen, relearning how to create instead of just survive. Logan would meet her there in the evenings after his shift, and they'd walk back to the apartment together, talking about small things, the weather, the customers, the strange new foods they were discovering in this city of immigrants and dreamers. Slowly, carefully, they built something that resembled normal lives. A month passed. Then two. The wanted poster from Silver Creek never appeared in San Francisco, and Logan began to believe that maybe the past really would stay buried, that maybe he could actually have the future he'd never allowed himself to imagine. Then, on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after they'd arrived, Logan came down to the docks and found a man waiting for him. Older, weathered, wearing a tin star that caught the morning sun. "Ross Logan?" the man asked. Logan's hand didn't move toward the pistol he no longer carried. "Who's asking?" Sheriff Williams, Las Cruces, though I'm a long way from my jurisdiction. The sheriff gestured to a crate. Mind if we sit? I've been traveling for 2 weeks to find you. I'm tired. They sat. Around them, the docks continued their morning chaos, ships loading and unloading, men shouting, gulls screaming overhead, normal sounds of a normal day. I'm not here to arrest you, Williams said. California won't honor a warrant from the territories, and even if they would, I don't have one. You're not charged with anything. Then why are you here? Closure. Understanding. The same reason I've been chasing answers since the day Carranza's stronghold fell apart. The sheriff pulled out a small notebook, flipping through pages covered in neat handwriting. I've spent 3 months interviewing survivors, talking to families who lost people to Carranza's gang, piecing together what actually happened in those final days. And I've learned that you're either a hero who saved this territory from a monster, or a vigilante who murdered several men and destabilized an entire region. Williams closed the notebook. Opinions vary depending on who you ask. What do you think? The sheriff was quiet for a long moment, watching the ships move in the harbor. I think you did what needed doing. I think Carranza was a cancer that law enforcement couldn't touch because he'd corrupted too many officials, killed too many witnesses, spread fear too effectively. I think you walked into a situation where legal justice had failed and imposed a rougher kind. But that doesn't make it right, doesn't make it legal. And it doesn't erase the fact that several men died by your hand, some of whom might have been redeemed if given the chance. Williams looked at Logan. You took justice into your own hands. That's a dangerous precedent, a dangerous path. I know, I live with that knowledge every day. Good. Because the moment you stop questioning it is the moment you become what you destroyed. The sheriff stood, adjusting his hat. I'm not going to take you in, not going to pursue this further. The territory is healing. Carranza's survivors have scattered. New leadership is emerging, legitimate leadership. Dragging you back there, putting you on trial, that would just reopen wounds that need time to close. So why make the trip? Because I needed to look you in the eye and understand what kind of man does what you did. Whether you were a monster wearing hero's clothing or something more complicated. Williams held out his hand. I have my answer. You're neither hero nor monster. You're just a man who lost everything and decided that stopping one more family from experiencing that loss was worth whatever it cost you. Logan shook his hand. The wanted poster in Silver Creek. I'll have it pulled. Officially, the investigation is closed due to lack of evidence and witnesses who can't be located or won't testify. Williams started to walk away, then paused. You've got a chance here, Logan. A chance to build something good. To be something other than what trauma made you. Don't waste it chasing ghosts or dwelling on debts you can never fully repay. I won't. See that you don't, because the territory doesn't need more violence. It needs people who learn from the violence and chose something better. The sheriff tipped his hat. Safe travels. And for what it's worth, thank you. For my daughter. She was one of the families Carranza terrorized. One of the ones who can sleep easier now that he's gone. That matters. Whatever else happened, that matters. Williams disappeared into the morning crowd, and Logan sat on the crate watching him go, feeling something shift inside him. Not absolution. He didn't deserve that and wouldn't claim it. But perhaps acceptance. The understanding that what he'd done couldn't be undone, couldn't be justified or explained away, but also didn't have to define everything that came after. That evening, he told Elena about the sheriff's visit. She listened without interrupting, then took his hands in hers. It's over then, truly over. The past isn't chasing us anymore. Yes, now we just have to figure out how to live with it. We will. The same way we figured out everything else. Elena smiled, and Logan saw in her face the same determination that had kept her unbroken through captivity and violence. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One moment of choosing to believe that we're more than what we survived. 6 months later, Logan stood on a hill overlooking the bay, watching ships come and go, thinking about journeys and destinations and the strange paths life took. He'd moved out of Maria's apartment into a small place of his own, though he spent more nights at Elena's than his own bed. The work at the docks had led to a better position, supervising crews, organizing shipments, using the strategic mind he'd developed in war for legitimate purposes. Elena had become Maria's partner in the restaurant, expanding the menu, bringing in new customers, building something that was theirs in a way that felt permanent and good. They weren't married. Neither of them had suggested it, though the understanding between them had deepened into something that felt more solid than any ceremony could make it. They were partners, survivors, two people who'd walked through hell and chosen to build heaven on the other side. Logan heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Elena climbing the hill, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She gave him one and stood beside him, looking out at the same view. "Thinking about him?" she asked gently. "Always, but differently now. Not with the same pain, more like..." Logan struggled for words. "Like honoring memory instead of drowning in it. He'd be proud of you, of what you've become. Maybe, or maybe he'd be horrified by what I did to get here. He'd understand, because he loved you, and love means accepting the whole person, the parts that shine and the parts that cast shadows." Elena leaned against him. "You're a good man, Logan. Not a perfect man, not a man without blood on his hands, but a good man who's trying every day to build something worth protecting." They stood together as the sun set over the bay, painting the water in shades of fire and gold, and Logan felt something he hadn't felt in longer than he could remember. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting, not the peace of being absolved, but the peace that came from accepting that the past couldn't be changed, only learned from, that the future was still unwritten, that every day was a choice between becoming what trauma wanted him to be and choosing something harder, something better. A month later, Logan received a letter. It had been forwarded through several addresses, had taken weeks to find him, and bore a return address from a small ranch in the territories. He opened it carefully and read, "Mr. Logan, I hope this letter finds you well and safe. It's Diego Martinez from the ranch, the one who drew you the map, the one whose family you saved by getting rid of Carranza. I wanted you to know that we're doing better. The fear is gone. People are rebuilding. The territory is healing, slow but sure. And people remember. They tell stories about the stranger who came and changed everything. My mother wanted me to tell you that you're welcome here anytime, that you'll always have a place at our table, that what you did, it mattered. It matters still. I'm learning to be brave like you, not the kind of brave that kills, but the kind that stands up when it's needed, that protects people who can't protect themselves, that chooses to make things better even when it's hard. Thank you for showing me what that looks like." Your friend, Diego Logan, read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and tucked it into his pocket. That night, he showed it to Elena, and they sat together in comfortable silence, understanding what the letter really meant. It meant that what they'd done, the violence, the manipulation, the destruction of Carranza's empire, had ripple effects they'd never see, had changed lives in ways they'd never know, had given people like Diego the courage to become something better. It didn't erase the cost, didn't wash away the blood, but it meant something. And sometimes, meaning was enough. Years passed. The city grew around them. The restaurant expanded. Logan moved from the docks to running his own freight company, using skills learned in war and honed in peace. They bought a house on one of the hills, small but theirs, with a view of the bay and room enough for the future they were slowly building. Elena never forgot her father. Logan never forgot Mateo. But the grief changed shape, became something they carried instead of something that carried them, became memory instead of open wound. Sometimes, late at night, Logan would wake with his heart pounding, reliving the moment when Carranza fell or when Delgado's bullet punched into his side. Elena would wake beside him, would hold him without words until the panic passed, understanding that some scars never fully healed. And sometimes, Elena would cry for the woman she'd been before Carranza's men took her, for the innocence that could never be recovered, for the father who'd died protecting her. Logan would hold her through those moments, offering the same wordless comfort she gave him. They healed together, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. 5 years after arriving in San Francisco, Logan stood in a cemetery on a hill, looking at a stone marker he'd had made. It bore a simple inscription: Mateo Logan, beloved brother, gone but never forgotten. His light lives on. It wasn't Mateo's grave. His body had never been recovered, had long since returned to the desert that had witnessed his murder. But Logan needed a place to visit, a place to talk to the brother he'd failed to save but had avenged completely. "I did it," Logan said quietly to the stone. "I destroyed them. Every single person who laughed while you died. I made them understand what they'd taken from the world. From me." The wind moved through the cemetery, rustling leaves, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. "But I also did something else, something you'd be proud of, I think. I learned to live again, to build instead of just destroy, to be more than what they made me." Logan touched the cold stone. "Elena and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, just close friends. Maria's going to cook. It'll be simple and good and exactly what we need." He paused, listening to the city sounds drifting up the hill. "I wish you could be there. Wish you could meet her. Wish you could see that the world isn't just monsters and violence, that there's still beauty worth protecting, worth living for." Logan's voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Sorry I was too far away. Sorry that all my strength and all my skill couldn't prevent what happened. But I want you to know I kept my promise. I made sure your death mattered, that it changed things, that it wasn't meaningless." He stood there for a long time, saying goodbye to the brother who'd been everything to him, making peace with the fact that some things couldn't be fixed, only accepted. When he finally left the cemetery, Elena was waiting at the bottom of the hill, understanding that this was something he'd needed to do alone. They walked home together through streets they'd come to know, past faces that had become familiar, through a life they'd built from the ashes of their old ones. That night, lying in bed with Elena curled against him, Logan thought about journeys and destinations and the strange alchemy that turned revenge into justice, into healing, into peace. Thought about a 15-year-old boy who'd died afraid and alone, and whether that boy would recognize the man his brother had become. He hoped so. Hoped that somewhere, somehow, Mateo knew that his death hadn't been forgotten, that it had sparked something that burned through an empire of cruelty and left room for something better to grow. But even if Mateo never knew, even if there was nothing after death but silence and darkness, Logan had kept faith with his memory, had honored him the only way he knew how, by making sure that the monsters who'd killed him paid in full, and then by learning to live again in a world without them. It wasn't redemption. Logan would never claim that. But it was something. A life built on hard choices and harder consequences. A life that acknowledged the darkness without letting it win. A life that said violence could be answered, evil could be opposed, and one person's courage could change the trajectory of an entire territory. And in the end, that was enough. Not perfect, not pure, but enough. The desert wind still blew across the territory where Carranza's empire had fallen, but they blew across families rebuilding, communities healing, children growing up free from the fear that had haunted their parents. Diego Martinez was among them, learning to be brave not with guns, but with conviction, not through violence, but through standing firm when it mattered. The canyon stronghold remained, slowly being reclaimed by the desert, its walls crumbling, its chambers filling with sand and silence. A monument to the truth that all empires built on cruelty eventually fall, whether through time or through the intervention of one man who refused to accept that monsters always won. And in San Francisco, in a house on a hill overlooking the bay, Ross Logan slept peacefully for the first time in years, holding the woman who'd survived hell beside him, dreaming not of revenge or violence, but of the simple, extraordinary future they were building together. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of believing that the past could inform without defining, that scars could prove survival instead of defeat, that even men who'd become weapons could learn to be builders again. In the end, that was the real victory. Not Carranza's death, not the empire's collapse, but the choice to survive what you'd become in pursuit of justice and emerge on the other side still capable of love, of hope, of believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That was the legacy Logan built from the ashes of revenge, and it was more than enough.